All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the stream. Welcome if you are new here. Thank you guys so much for joining me today and for waiting patiently, as always, for the intro to finish up. Hope everybody is doing well today. Come on, guys. We got 150 people here, which is fantastic to see. Thank you, guys. But you got to hit that like button. You got to hit that like button. We're sitting at 26 likes. We could easily crush 50 likes. I ain't starting the stream till we get 50 likes. We do have a couple of super chats from New Soul 9, which I will read soon. New Soul 9, appreciate that, man. William, no, unfortunately, I did not see it, buddy. James, you like the shirt? I'm glad. I like the shirt, too. Thank you, Lady Gamer. Ray, what's up, man? State of Jim Ryan. What's going on, buddy? The state of Jim Ryan. Steve Fox says PS5 is going to be his last console. He's going to jump to Steam. Jerry Gamer, I don't think it'll be doom and gloom per se. No, that's not my intention anyway. Feeling pretty good today. But we do have a really interesting topic, certainly. Something that popped up, I think, on Saturday. Was it yesterday? Or maybe it was Friday evening. A job listing. A Sony job listing has set the internet ablaze. Rage Zero says PS5 and Series X will be his last consoles. Uh-oh. Steve, I'm doing all right, man. Mockery Ninja, you're saying everybody's jumping to PC if Sony goes third party? You think so? All right, so yeah, I'll just give it a couple more minutes here, let more people file in, and then I'll read New Soul's super chats. And William, you do say here using your milestone chat 20 months, saying I recommend reading my posts correcting information on the topic. I don't know, William. It's not you. It's just I don't want to go on Twitter, man. Don't make me go back. Don't make me go back, William. Do I think people will abandon their digital games? Jerry Gamer, is that happening? Hardcore PlayStation fans are changing their profile picture on Twitter. I mean, I don't know if you're serious or not, or if that's a real thing. I haven't been on. That's so funny if true, though. I mean, that's been the funniest thing to see for a long time now. Boss, really? Come on, man. The funniest thing is seeing people freak out acting like this means you can't enjoy games anymore. That's the weirdest behavior, man. Like, don't get me wrong, the conversation's interesting and it should be dissected, especially by us. You know, people who are following this stuff closely. This makes for a very interesting conversation. But I think sometimes people, generally speaking, with news like this, and the same can be said when it happened, you know, the stuff that happened last year with Xbox, people lose the forest for the trees, where it's like, guys, you can still enjoy video games. It's okay. It's okay. You're allowed to enjoy video games. But yeah, we'll dive into the conversation. I'm going to start here with New Soul. Well, actually, really quick before I do, yeah, take a moment. If you haven't, please hit that like button. It helps the streams more than you know, and it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Okay, we want to get new people in here. We already have really good viewership, which is great to see. Thank you guys for joining the stream. Take a moment, hit that like button. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member, gifting memberships, dropping a super chat, or dropping a direct donation. We're totally fan funded. I can only do what I do here because you guys, this awesome community, makes it possible. So thank you for that. We have New Soul 9 with 3 super chats. He says, hey, MBG, I wanted to add to the conversation about Spider-Man going to Xbox. What type of move that type of move, excuse me, doesn't actually indicate PlayStation is going third party, and I'll explain why. We need to remember Spider-Man game is the license is not fully owned by Sony and more by Marvel, so Xbox executives don't really need to approach PlayStation to bring Spider-Man, but rather go to Marvel themselves. In conclusion, making this more of an MLB situation all over again, where it's not really PlayStation's choice, where PlayStation will naturally comply just like they did with the MLB. It's an interesting thought. I mean, I've always considered the fact that when Insomniac had their big hack, I think it was December of 2023, one of the pieces of information we learned that we were not supposed to learn about um, was the sales expectations for, I think it I think it was for Spider-Man and Wolverine, but I remember specifically, I think with Wolverine, it's like the minimum sales expectation in order to justify everything. You know, the partnership between Sony and Marvel, the budget of this game has to be about 6 million units sold, which is a high number. Like that's a lot of full price units. Now, granted, we're talking about something like Wolverine, so I think it could definitely achieve that. But there's that kind of pressure where it's like if they don't hit that number, Sony's actually going to lose money on the licensing deal, and I think Marvel will be safe. The whole idea is that Marvel won't lose money licensing it out. But what you're saying here about Spider-Man, it could be true. I mean, I don't think Marvel would have to twist Sony's arm too much about backporting Spider-Man 1 or 2. Spider-Man 3 is the more interesting question to me, though, and we're going to talk about that later on. Like, would Sony actually drop Spider-Man 3 across everything? And if they were to do that, again, it's like, well, how much of it is Sony's decision versus how much of it would be Marvel? We do have this job listing, though, New Soul 9. This job listing straight up is Sony confirming that they are going to be releasing more games on Xbox and Switch too. Now, where things get kind of muddy with this conversation is Sony obviously keeps certain things vague with this job listing. Like they don't explicitly state certain things. So certain things are left up to interpretation or for people to decide for themselves. And that's what has already muddied the conversation quite a bit is people are jumping to whatever conclusion that suits them. You know, I'm not interested in jumping to any conclusions. I'm going to actually reiterate what I've said numerous times up till this point, which is when it comes to PlayStation at this point, expect anything. In fact, it's funny because that's one of the last things I said on a previous stream from last week. I said, when it comes to Sony, expect anything. And here we are. There's a job listing where Sony's going to be looking to port more games. Does this mean they're going full multi-platform? I don't know. If I said yes, that would be making an assumption. If I said no, that would be making an assumption. Nobody really knows what Sony's true intention is here, other than the fact that they are letting us know more games are going. Are they just live service? Are they single player? I don't know. I do not know. But we'll talk about it. We'll try to turn over every stone. You know, we'll go over every scenario, every situation, what's likely, what's not likely. You know, there's no denying that in a situation like this, you're going to see some people melting down. You're going to see some people, you know, acting like Sony just came out and told you that, you know, Spider-Man 3 and The Last of Us Part 3 are dropping day one on Xbox. It's not either of those things. The one thing that I want to say, though, that's super interesting about this situation for Sony compared to what we witnessed for Microsoft over the last year and a half or 2 years or so is that there's like no rumors. This stuff is coming from it's so different where I speculated last year that I think Microsoft was purposely putting rumors out there and purposely leaking stuff and kind of, you know, getting the headlines written to gauge people's reactions. Sony, nothing is leaking, dude. Like they just flat out are like, yeah, here's Helldivers 2 Xbox. Not a single leak or rumor prior, as far as I'm aware, anyway. And now here they are. They're not doing some kind of podcast and trying to be like, oh, let me explain exactly what's happening. They're just like, here's a fucking job listing. We're going to be bringing more games over. There's no rumors. They're just doing it. So We have Novinzer with a $5 chat, and he says, "Shut the channel down, MBG. It was a good run. We ain't any better than the nerds over there on Team Green. Gotta shut it down. It's over. It was a good run. It was a good run. It's come to an end. This who would have thought it was a job listing that took MBG out, bro? A job listing. Well, we do have. Oh, by the way, we're gonna read the job listing, so we'll see exactly what Sony's saying. I do also want to let you guys know that we do have at least one insider. I said there was no rumors, but we have one insider, Shinobi602. He actually chimed in. And, I'm just going to feed you the information. Don't shoot the messenger. All right? I'm just going to feed you the information. I'm going to tell you what Shinobi602 said. And you can make of it what you will. Bobby Heckelmeyer with a super chat says, people are freaking out when literally nothing has happened yet. Maybe the next investors call will get more info. It's worth noting the timing of this is peculiar, Bobby, because the next earnings report from Sony is on August 7th, I believe. So really not that long from now. And I would imagine we will get some level of clarity. At the very least, investors are going to want to know what Sony's plan is here. So it would be kind of bizarre if Sony didn't say anything about it. Is Sony going to come out and flat out say, like, yeah, we're going full third party? Unlikely. I don't think that that's just something they would just say blatantly, but they could drop a couple of hints, and provide, again, just some level of clarity. We have William Aguilar with 2 super chats. Thank you for that, buddy. He says the job listing represents PlayStation best applying the exact same strategy they outlined 2 years ago with the 3 types of games, tentpole, multiplayer, and experimental, that they aren't pivoting from. It's not a changed strategy. It's the same. Tentpole, 1 to 2 years later on PC, experimental PC and Switch 2, multiplayer, all platforms, including Xbox. Well, we'll see. The problem, William, is that I was considering not even covering this topic, to be honest, but it's impossible not to. Like, if I tried not to cover it and tried to do a stream, this is all everybody would want to talk about. But the reason why I kind of was thinking about not covering it is because with situations like this, people make up their minds. You know what I mean? Like, William, I'm not going to sit here and say you're right or you're wrong because I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows. I think the problem that we see now, that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years, is that we have all, when I say we, I'm talking about people who are engaged in the console space, right? Or people who have, I guess, been engaged with gaming at all, but have paid attention to the console space. We've all been conditioned to have a certain expectation for not a couple of years, but literally decades. And that's important to understand. We have seen Sony and Microsoft go toe-to-toe for about 20 years straight. And there's always been a couple of foundational, fundamental, you don't even question this. You don't even question exclusivity. You don't question if they acquire a studio or an IP, whether it's going to be exclusive or not. You don't question whether or not it's in the name of trying to sell more consoles. We have witnessed this for the past 20 years, and then just out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, it started with Microsoft. They're just like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. And, you see the meltdowns. You see how it's like, oh, I guess it's over. That's it. Like, this has to be bad news, right? And it's like, well, it is what it is. Like, it's just they're not doing that anymore. And then you see Sony at the beginning of this generation, or around 2021, they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to do something different too. We're just going to put our games on PC. It's like, oh, well, that's weird. You just spent the last, 25 years not doing that. Explicitly not doing that. And then just yeah, we're going to do it now. And that's been the theme of this entire generation. The theme is, anytime you assume to know what's going to happen, it turns out you probably don't know. It's even if it does happen, it probably doesn't happen in the way that you thought, right? It's just, we are seeing both Sony and Microsoft, they're not planning for the next 5 years. They're planning for the next 10 to 15 years. And they're setting down those, I guess, those foundations. That's what we're seeing right now. That's why Microsoft was willing to pay $68 billion for Activision and then say, of course, we're putting those games on PlayStation. That's why they're saying, yeah, we're gonna continue to put these games on Game Pass, even though it's probably going to hurt our game sales. This is why you're seeing Sony buy a team, that being Nixxes, acquire them and say, you're going to work on PC ports earnestly. And we're also going to make live service games. It's all like, people think that these are short-term, that these are short-term plays that Sony and Microsoft are making. And I find that kind of comical in a way, because it's like, you really think that if Sony, you think Sony putting Helldivers 2 on Xbox, that's a short-term thing. That's just, we just want to get a little bit of money right now. You think that's all it means. I just think people are kind of, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it should be clear by now. It should be clear by now that Sony and Microsoft do not see future growth. Keyword being growth in video game consoles anymore. People need to understand that Sony has done something with the PS5 that even they are probably a little bit surprised by. And that is the PS5 console generation. I want you to think about this for a minute. All right, because I'm seeing all these reactions and all these conversations happening, but nobody seems to be considering this. Take a moment to think. The last earnings report that Sony did, they present the PS5 console. And what they present to their shareholders is the PS5 console is by far and away the most profitable video game console we've ever released. How many units has it sold? 77 million. By now, it's probably at 80 million. Okay, nothing too crazy. Par for the course. How much money has it made? Pretty much double what the PS4 made. The PS5 made more money than the entirety of the PS1 through PS4 generation combined already. I want you to understand that Sony achieved this while backporting their games to PC. All of this has occurred while Sony is out here marketing and putting resources into backporting games to PC and porting games like Lego Horizon to Switch 2. So when Hiroki Totoki said in not the last earnings report, but the one previous, when he was asked by shareholders, have you noticed a diminish in console sales by releasing your games on PC? And Hiroki Totoki responded by saying, no, we have not noticed any cannibalization by putting our games on PC. The console seems to be doing just as well as it ever has. What do you think the next step from there is? Logically, what is the next step? Is it to just say, well, all right, I guess we'll just stay here? No, you're going to push further. That's what you're going to do. You're going to say, okay, well, if we can backport our games to PC and still just sell just as many consoles, what else can we do? Well, let's release our most successful live service on Xbox. Let's see what happens then. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're saying be more greedy, but pretty much, yeah. I am a little bit behind on the super chats, though. Let me catch up here. And William, with what you said here, you could be right. You could be wrong. I saw a lot of people in the chat saying you're completely wrong. I mean, the truth is, man, the people in the chat know just as much as you do. You know just as much as them. I know just as much as you guys. I'm not part of Sony's board. I'm not in the boardroom meetings. I don't know what's being said. I don't know what they're planning on doing. We'll go over this job application, though. Maybe we'll get a little bit of insight. some level anyway. Could this be just for live service? Sure. Do people want to hear that? No. No, you're seeing a rift between people who are, I guess, like the fanboys and the casuals, or not casuals, but people who are not as tethered to the PlayStation side of things. If you ask somebody who's not really, a PlayStation enthusiast or a fanboy, what this means, they'll say, "Oh yeah, they're full slate or whatever. They're going all in." If you ask somebody who's more on the PlayStation side of things and has grown accustomed to exclusive games, they'll tell you, "No, it's just going to be live service." Now, this is where I want to point something out here. We have Shinobi 602. Again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not here to tell you what to make of this. I'm just here to tell you that Shinobi 602 is a very reliable insider. He has given us information on PlayStation in the past. He's given us information on many different things. But he's an industry insider, and he's very well connected. He said over on the Reset Era forums talking about this, quote, "People getting really carried away with this job listing, LOL." And then somebody said in response, "I still think it's probably safe to assume Sony thawing a bit on hardline exclusivity. Games as a service games coming later to Xbox if they make sense. More stuff like Lego Horizon, smaller spin-off games come to Switch, etc." Shinobi 602 replied by saying, quote, "Yes, these types of things. Yes to these types of things." That's what he said. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to listen to what Shinobi 602 has to say more than I'm going to listen to some random internet person telling me it's full slate. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to be closed-minded about it. It doesn't mean that when I read this job posting, yes, I do walk away thinking this could mean anything. This clearly means Concord's coming to Xbox. We have Nick here with a $10 super chat. He says, "True exclusivity died in the console sphere this week, and gaming will be worse for it. Those who scream the contrary can argue with a wall. I'll be shown to be right in a few years." Interesting. That's another bet that people are making right now, Nick. The age-old question of, does exclusivity matter? Is exclusivity good? Is exclusivity bad? That does depend on who you ask. I've gone back and forth on the matter. I see pros and cons to both. I understand that exclusivity does make it easier for devs to focus in on a single piece of hardware, makes optimization easier, and this is a point that I've always tried to make. When a developer has the pressure put on them that your game is meant to sell consoles, it's not just meant to sell, it's meant to sell a lot of units, but it's meant to sell consoles. Usually there's an extra level of polish and sheen that goes on top of that to try to, oh, wow, look at that. That's the big first party console seller. It's supposed to really pop. Not to say that games that aren't meant to sell consoles don't also have pop sometimes. They certainly do. But on the other side of that, I do have to ask the question. If, we'll do a hypothetical. If Sony says, "You know what? We're done with exclusivity. We're going full third party." Am I to assume that that means Spider-Man 3 is going to be a lesser game now? Or that if Naughty Dog ever makes The Last of Us Part 3 or another Uncharted or something, that the quality is going to be diminished? That these games are suddenly going to be worse than they were previously. I would have a hard time buying into that notion, just because it's well, I don't know, man. I think these teams are very good. Optimization wise, I would question that. I would. You're talking just like one of the other topics we're talking about is how apparently Gears of War E-Day and State of Decay 3 are coming to PlayStation 5 day one. I do question how much more pressure is on these teams now to make sure their games are fully optimized, because they got to do multi-platform game dev now. You got to optimize for Xbox, got to optimize for PC. Now you have to optimize for PS5. So you're taking on a larger workload. And we've seen multi-platform games certainly struggle with optimization. It's not like it's something new. Although there have been very well optimized games as well. So it really, I think, just comes down to the studio and their capacity to be able to actually properly optimize. But there is no denying that when a development team only has to focus on one piece of hardware, theoretically, it should make the development pipeline a little bit smoother, a little bit easier. But AI will optimize. There you go. There you go. Lux says here with a super chat, PlayStation is the best console experience for third-party games, and that's what will sell it, not just the Sony IPs. On average, only a fifth of PlayStation users buy them, and I'm excited to dive into that conversation, Lux. Yeah, I've touched on it a little bit, but that's the conversation I'm excited to have. And I think that's the bigger question that needs to be asked here. I understand there's the whole back and forth that's going to go on for probably a long time. It's like my exclusives, no exclusives, third party, fanboys, Sony ponies, Xbox, the whole thing. I get that. I've been, seeing that for years now. The question I have, because Sony really is in a unique position, if Sony does go multi-platform, if that's in fact what they're getting ready to do, what does that mean for their console? That to me is the big question mark that a lot of people will tell you, oh, it's over, like their console's dead. But it is funny to think that what Lux is saying here is true, is that the overwhelming majority of PlayStation sales are not driven by exclusives. The foundational sales are, and that may be the important part. There's a trickle-down effect, I guess you could say. Win the hardcore over first, casuals come second. The casuals follow. But I want to have that conversation because I'm not completely convinced, truthfully, that if Sony, again, I'm just trying to entertain the hypothetical here. Some people think it's already come to pass, but assuming Sony does go full multi-platform, I want to know what that means for the console. I am not fully convinced that that means their console sales are going to tank. Because again, I want to remind people that Sony technically went multi-platform when they started releasing their games on PC. A lot of people told me that, by the way. Anytime I would try to explain that, like, well, there's timed exclusives and they're going to be backported and you don't know how long you're going to wait, I was met with a lot of PC fans and some Xbox fans harping on me, saying, no, MBG, they're third party. It's like, oh, okay, like they're multi-platform. Like, okay. They're backporting games to PC, they're multi-platform. Helldivers Day 1 on PC, multi-platform, fine. And I want to highlight the fact that, according to Sony, this has not negatively impacted their sales. I also want to talk about one other thing here. There's so many different angles to tackle this from. What does this mean for the potential of a PlayStation 5 price increase? I know that seems kind of random, and it's like, well, what does that have to do with anything? I'm just wondering if Sony is going to be announcing a price increase for the PS5 relatively soon. They did warn of this, by the way. They did say this is something they may have to do. We saw Microsoft do it with their consoles. We saw what happened around the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, where Nintendo was kind of panicking, like, what are we gonna have to do with the pricing here? Sony during this time told their investors that they stockpiled millions of PS5s in preparation for the uncertainty of the tariff situation. As far as I'm aware, the tariff situation has not been rectified. I don't know what's been going on there, but I do remember Sony basically warning that if by the time they run out of that stockpile, if depending on what happens with the Chinese, the China tariffs, they may have to raise prices of the consoles. And I have firmly believed, since this became a prospect, that if Sony raises the price of the PS5 like that, it is over. It is over. Not to say that like the PS5 is going to collapse and it's a bad generation. I just mean like the people who haven't upgraded to a PS5 yet, the people who haven't purchased them, they're the people that are waiting for a price drop. And they're going to potentially find out that actually what you're going to get is a price increase. And regardless of the reasoning, looking at it from the perspective of that consumer, they don't give a shit about the reasoning. They're just going to see the price went up. And they're going to be like, yeah, I'm good. Just going to stick with my PS4. I do wonder if Sony is maybe preparing to potentially announce a price increase. Like they just can't avoid it. and because of that, they are anticipating that console sales are going to slow down. And there's also what we've been talking about for many, many, many months now. What does that mean for the PS6? Are we looking at an $800, $900, potentially $1,000 PS6? I know that sounds insane, but keep in mind the PS5 Pro is currently $700, and that's without Sony potentially having to increase the price. This is why when we talk about the reasons Sony would, I don't want to say give up on the console because that's a bit too dramatic, but why they would be willing to start doing what they're doing, where they're like, you know what? Yeah, we need to start looking to go more multi-plat, or we need to start, thinking about bringing these games over to PC quicker. There's a chance that they have the telemetry, they have the data, and they also are like, know internally they're going to be increasing prices. Pretty much the PS5 generation is going to be the last one where they sell a mass amount of consoles. That's a reality. There's nothing fanboy about it. It's just the reality that things are getting more expensive. These, people expect when it comes to a new generation, the next gen, they expect a leap. They expect something significant. If Sony wants to deliver that, it's going to be expensive. At what point does, the 40, 50 million players that are like, I expect a console to be $400 or $500. At what point do they get priced out? We have Antonio Lopes. He says multi-plat job listing. Nintendo Direct next week? I don't know. There's been some rumblings of a Nintendo Direct. Yo, all I know is that apparently a Plants vs. Zombies remaster is supposed to get announced at, I think it's the Nintendo Direct or something. Shinobi Nate the Hate on Reset Era said yesterday people are getting out of control with this job listing. Well, yeah, it's going to happen though. People, people watched things get out of control for Microsoft, and a lot of what people said about Microsoft, like, listen, man, you're just coping, or you're getting ahead of yourself. A lot of what the people who were freaking out, a lot of what they said turned out to be true. I mean, we're literally about to watch Gears of War launch on PlayStation. It's, that's what people were fighting about a year ago. Like, that's not going to happen. And then you get Phil Spencer and he's like, yeah, no red lines. And then, 6 months later, it's like, here's Gears on PlayStation. I understand why people are like, and that's what's going to happen with Sony. I understand that because we just witnessed that happen with another company and another brand where that was never supposed to happen. And that's why I don't feel comfortable telling anybody what they should expect. You have to determine that for yourself. I've seen so many people saying they're going to PC, and I'm like, do it. But I do question how many people are saying that so that they feel it's like I don't want to go to PC. Sony's making me. Like, dude, Sony's not making you do shit. I don't think Sony gives a shit anymore about what you want to do. Yeah, you. I don't think they give a shit. I think what you need to do is gravitate. You need to play where you feel good playing. And if that's like, I saw people in response to this saying, yeah, I'm still going to play on PlayStation. Yeah, me too. Will it be less exciting potentially, or like will it be unusual and an adjustment to be like, oh yeah, there's Wolverine, it's dropping day one on Xbox. Yeah, that would be a little weird. It's like, well, I didn't expect this outcome. Is it going to make me be like, you know what? Time to flush my PS5 down the toilet. Time to go to PC. Dude, if I wanted to go to PC, I would go to PC right now. I have a gaming PC. I've used it to game. Granted, not often, but if that's where I want to go, I'll go there. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Sony is, I'm not saying they're at that point yet. I'm just saying that if it turns out in the next year, 2 years, by the end of this generation, Sony's going to turn to every PlayStation buyer and say, listen, if your only reason for being here is because of exclusives, it's okay for you to go now. I mean, that would be surprising because I'd be like, wow, damn, dude, you guys just spent 4 generations building that up to just turn to those people and say, never mind. That would be a little, no matter which way you slice it, that would be surprising, where it's like, couldn't have seen that one coming. But if that's what they end up doing, then it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Go where you want. We had this conversation with Xbox. And it's interesting because, you know, the big difference between this conversation where it's like, well, Sony's going to do what Microsoft is doing. And I'm like, but there is still one major difference between these two brands that we cannot just throw it to the wayside and pretend it doesn't exist. The major difference between these brands is one has successfully sold a mass amount of consoles. The other has struggled and watched their sales pretty much die and go off a cliff. So we have to ask ourselves, what difference does that make to the bigger picture, to the mid to long-term strategy? Because it may make no difference for all we know. Or it may make all the difference. I'm going to have to call up Hiroki Totoki and ask this man a couple questions. We're going to have me and Herman are going to have a discussion. But it's just funny to me because it's like, dude, I just beat Death Stranding the other day. And I'm not talking about that here. Just so you know, by the way, guys, either tomorrow or Tuesday, we're going to be doing the spoiler cast for Death Stranding 2. So please look forward to that. If you've been waiting for that, either tomorrow or Tuesday, have your notifications on. I'll try to put the stream out maybe a little bit earlier so people are aware. Hello, boss. But I was just thinking to myself, would I have enjoyed Death Stranding 2 any less if, as I was playing it, it was also available on PC or hell, even on Xbox? The answer is no. Boss, do you see this guy? Boss, I'm trying to read through the super chats. Come on. Okay. No. Come on. I know. Guys, remember, you can gift memberships. Become a member. Gift memberships. If we hit 25, we're gonna give this guy his treats. Oh my god. Okay. MBG versus Herman boxing match. We have a Joker Thief here. Anybody who dropped the super chat, by the way, I'm just a little bit behind on them. I'll read your super chats. Don't worry. Lego Horizon 2. What would I even tell Herman? I would turn to Herman and be like, Herman, what drugs were you on when you thought Concord was going to be the next Star Wars? Joker Thief with a $20 super chat says, serious question. Would you rather Sony stick to native hardware with a handful of exclusives every generation, or have Sony going third party with double or triple the amount of top tier PlayStation Studio titles for everyone to play? It's a good question. That's a good question. I mean, if those were my two options, there's the nostalgic part of me. There is the part of me that grew up with Xbox and PlayStation, duking it out, having exclusives, that wants, there's that part of me that wants to say, I'd rather them just stick to the traditional model and stick to exclusivity, and native hardware. But the other side of me is thinking, well, if giving that up means double or possibly triple, I don't know if that'll necessarily be the case, but more games. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's always been about. Boss, come on, man. I'll give you an advance. This is in good faith. That's in good faith that we will hit 25 members today. I mean, Joker Thief, the prospect of double or triple the amount of titles from PlayStation Studios does sound better, as long as they maintain the quality. And that's the big question. We don't even know that if Sony were to go multi-platform, we don't even know if this would indicate that, that the output will increase. It could indicate that the quality will either be maintained or go higher due to how expensive these games are to make. But it's a good question, Joker Thief. And thank you for the super chat, man. We also have Michael Lynch saying, it just seems you're more willing to listen to an insider when Sony itself says they won't put their tentpole games on other consoles. Wait, let me read that again. It just seems you are more willing to listen to an insider than when Sony itself says they won't put their tentpole games on other consoles. Well, it's because, Michael, like, dude, I don't, anytime a corporation or a corporate executive tells me this is what they're doing, I don't take it as, and there you go, that what they just said is going to be true perpetually. Like, for example, if Sony said in their last earnings report that, yeah, our tentpole titles are going to remain exclusive or we're going to be strategic with them, I'll believe you until we get to the next shareholder meeting, because I know that plans change. And if those plans changed, you will have to update your plans because you can't lie to the shareholders, you know? And you don't want to lie to the fan base either, of course, but the plans do change and they do update. And it's not that I believe insiders more than I believe what Sony's saying themselves. It's just that, like, for example, I'm seeing people right now look at what Shinobi 602 is saying. Shinobi is a very well respected insider, dude. Like, he doesn't make shit up, and he rarely says stuff. And he's telling people that, like, this is more to do with live service and smaller stuff. That's what he's saying. I want to take that and present it to people and be like, for those who are really going all out, you know, jumping out there to the deep end, you might want to chill. But I don't want to do that, because if I do that, it's just, well, you're a coping fanboy. And it's like, I'm really not. Like, Sony, go put Death Stranding 2 on Xbox right now. Do it. You won't do it. No balls. No, but it's like, it's, to me, I've made it clear a few times in the past, and I'll make it clear again here. I've been asked this question ever since like 2018. I've been asked this question for years. Every year, asked it multiple times by different people. What would Sony have to do to get you to walk away? Kind of like you did with Xbox. What would they have to do? And I said, there's two things. These are the two things. You ready? Number one, stop producing the type of games that drew me into your platform to begin with, or dramatically drop the quality of those games. Okay, so that's one. If they do that, and to be clear, I'm not really sure where I would go. Like, I'm definitely not going to Nintendo. I still wouldn't want to go to PC, but that might be my only option. But it's like, if you stop doing that, I'm going to have a hard time sticking around, because that's why I came here. Number two, I do care about the console. I've always cared about the console experience. I'm a console gamer. Like, I don't want to play on PC. If PC was my only way to play games, truly, fine. I have no choice. But I don't want to go to PC. So the second thing is, if you stop caring about the console, if you completely deprioritize the console and the console just does not matter to you anymore, that would make me feel pretty annoyed, and I would consider my options. When I look at this job listing, that as of right now does not indicate, the closest thing that indicates, it doesn't indicate that they're going to drop the quality of their games or make less games. It doesn't indicate that. It may indicate that maybe they don't have as much faith in the console anymore, that they're afraid they're not going to sell as many, or, you know, they need to make more revenue somewhere else to make up for the potential losses on the console. I still don't get the feeling. Like, I look at what's in front of me right now, which is, well, Sony did just drop a PS5 Pro, which is the best console I've ever used. You know, the most powerful console, and shit's awesome. They're working with AMD on Project Amethyst for what will be the PlayStation 6, new PlayStation handheld hardware. You know, they dropped more accessories than ever before for the PS5 this generation than they have in previous generations. When I look at what's in front of me, I don't get the sense at all that Sony is not going to continue to prioritize their own hardware to a certain extent, right? That it like I'm not getting the signal that it's like, we're kind of done here. I'm not getting that signal. So those are the two things that when I look over, like, well, what would PlayStation have to do to make me, because I see people doing, like, I see people flipping the table right now, and I'm like, you're flipping the table over a job listing, bro. And like, if you're willing to flip a table over the job listing, I have to ask, why were you even here in the first place? That's what I have seen this time and time again, not just with PlayStation, where it's like people reveal their hand, where it's like, oh, you weren't really here for the games. Like, that was a part of it, but there was something else surrounding the games that was more important to you. And that I will never understand. Don't get me wrong. Exclusivity has always been important to me when it comes to the conversations. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've never cared about exclusivity. I'd be lying to you. I have evidence on my channel that I've absolutely cared about exclusivity. But I also have evidence on my channel. Why did I move over to PlayStation? You want to hear an interesting? I'll give you one. If you were to ask me the question, all right, MBG, let's go back to 2017, 2018. You're on the Xbox One, right? You're sitting there rooting for Microsoft, like, come on, Microsoft, get your shit together. You got to do better than this. I think you can do it. Rally, right? If Sony back in 2016, 17, and 18, if they were dropping games like Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, Bloodborne, Uncharted 4, upcoming games like Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, if they were going to drop these games onto Xbox day one, would I have gone out and bought a PS4? The answer is no. I would still be on Xbox, and I would be playing those games on Xbox. I'd be turning to Microsoft and be like, bro, they're outclassing you on your own console right now. Would it get it? I would still be telling Microsoft to get their shit together, but I'd be like, I don't have to move. I don't have to go somewhere else. And that's the interesting part about this conversation, is that, like, you know, we have to ask ourselves, if Sony were to go multi-platform, as in they're going to bring their games to Xbox as well, or, you know, even go day one PC with some of their single players, has Sony given up? Like, they're like, you know what? If you're still entrenched on Xbox, we're not winning you over. If you're one of the 10, 15, 20 million people that are still there playing every day, you're clearly going down with the ship, if it ever goes down. We still want your money, though. Is it that? Because what I just said is true, man. Like, if exclusivity, in the case of people like me, and I think quite a few other people that partake in these conversations, exclusivity is what gets them over. Now, granted, and this is the important part, granted, there were other things that I've discovered on the PlayStation side of things that I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually pretty sick. It really started with the PS5 generation, right? Like, I ended up being won over because of the exclusives, but it started with the PS5 generation where I'm like, yo, that DualSense is looking pretty good. Like, no joke. Like, that looks like that may end up being my new favorite controller. And now it is. You know, I look at the way Sony's handling the games rollout, the operating system, you know, the new features, the speed of the console, how it's finally going to be quiet and not sound like a jet engine like the PS4 Pro. All these different things that surround it, where I'm like, you know, they're basically just communicating, like, we have an ecosystem here that's filled with hardware, accessories, and first-party games. You know, and that made a big difference. That made a huge difference. In that, you know, it's like, well, you won me over with the games. Now that I'm here, let's see what else is on offer. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I think the games themselves have always, and yeah, the trophy, I got addicted to trophy hunting as well. That's a big thing that I didn't list, but I think it just kind of proves that the games, in a lot of ways, can act as the gateway, you know? So the idea of Sony being willing to kind of give that up is quite surprising, because it has in some cases worked so well for them. Salaire says Bloodborne's what got him. We have Moses, a member for 18 months, who says Shinobi might be right, but nobody knows what's going to happen 12 months from now. Just last month, nobody would have predicted Helldivers 2 on Xbox. That's a good point. That's a good point. I was one of the people that was asked numerous times, do I think Helldivers 2 is coming to Xbox? And I said no. Not because it's like, oh, I don't want to see it on Xbox, but mainly because I was just like, dude, they won't even give Microsoft Lego Horizon. They're not giving them Helldivers. Like Sony wants nothing to do with Xbox. And, you know, a couple months later, it's like, oh shit. You know, I was like totally wrong about that one. William Aguilar says with a $10 super chat, Sony can't lie to their shareholders. They already told us at BSM. They aren't pivoting from tentpole. God of War 1 and 2 years later on PC, experimental/dead IP. Patapon and Lego, Switch and PC multiplayer, all platforms. And you know what the irony of this is? Like, look, again, I'm trying to be careful the way that I talk about this because I know that people want to turn this into like a fanboy console war thing. I'm not trying to do that. You know, I'm trying to just be honest in that, like, look, man, I've definitely partook in the console wars. You know, I've definitely partook in the whole, you know, man, Sony has the best exclusives and Microsoft is basically shitting the bed and whatnot. Yeah, that was a thing that I still do. Yeah, sure, I still do. But I'm just trying to, in the same way that once Microsoft was like, bro, we're not trying to win you over anymore. All right. We heard you loud and clear, MBG. We're just gonna bring the games over to PlayStation. Okay. Hopefully you give them a shot. All right. We're not trying to convince you of anything anymore. And I'll be honest, like when they did that, I was like, oh, well. Like a part of me almost felt kind of bad where I'm like, oh shit. I didn't think they would give up. You know, like I guess it was just like a part of me. It's like I never thought they would just give up and be like, you know what, screw it, we're giving you Gears of War. How about that? I mean, you want some Forza Horizon? Huh? You want some Forza Horizon 5? Take it. We're done. Fuck you guys. Like once Microsoft did that, I was like, oh well, okay. I guess let's check it out. And, you know, I didn't like everything that they sent over, but, you know, and then I play something like Forza Horizon 5, and you're like, God damn. All right. Well, shit. You guys got some stuff you're cooking. Some good stuff you're cooking over there, but that's where I'm just saying, like, if it is true, like, and Animal, to be clear, I was being a bit facetious there, bro. Like, I've been trying really hard to stray away from the console war stuff because the interesting thing here is that if Sony does go in this direction, like, there is a part of me, I can't help it, that's kind of like, you know, like, like William, like what you just said with your super chat, let's just say that's, you know, like a year from now, it turns out Sony just pivoted. And they're like, actually, what we said about those tentpole exclusives, we're just going to go multi-plat. If they do that, I would be very interested to see the outcome because do you know what I think the outcome would be? I really thought about this. I've thought about it long and hard. Lying there in bed at night, sweating, you know, just staring at the ceiling thinking, could it be? And I thought, what if both Sony and Microsoft went multi-platform and then nothing else, and then nothing changed? What if that's all that happened? It's just, yeah, here you go. And then weeks go by, months go by, and then nothing changes. Sony's still selling just as many consoles. People still playing where they want to play. People still arguing over which games are better than other games. Still got the woke/anti-woke crowd clashing day in and day out. I'm just thinking, like, what if this big fear that everybody has had for the longest time, it just turns out that it's like, yeah, no, PlayStation games are still good. Microsoft's still pumping out just as many games as they have been since they acquired ABK and Bethesda. Okay. PS6 is still going to be a great console that probably going to sell tens of millions of units. I'm just considering, like, I'm trying to think from Sony's perspective, from the business oriented perspective, where what if they're just thinking like that? What if they're just like, bro, we just put like all of our games on PC and we have seen no dip in console sales whatsoever. The PS5 is doing just as good or even better than the PS4 by most metrics. Yeah, I do just wonder if you're like, oh, you know what? Like, at what point does one of the executives in the room ask, and maybe it is Hiroki Totoki, like, why are we even doing exclusivity? And who knows? Maybe they'll fuck around and find out, which would be even funnier. I have to admit, that would be the funniest outcome, is if Sony said, screw it, let's go full multi-plat, and then their sales just collapsed. Like, just flat out, they just flatlined. And they're like, oh God, wait, oh no. It turns out this was the one thing. I just don't see that happening, though. Like, will you lose hardcore players? Sure, but I almost feel like Sony is turning, I'll be honest, I feel like Sony is getting ready to turn to the like really, to the people who really care about exclusivity, or the people who are freaking out about this. And I feel like they're basically going to turn and be like, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? And I've seen, like, people keep trying to threaten Sony with PC. And that to me is kind of funny, where they're like, I'm going to PC. That's it. That's the last straw, Sony. I'm building a PC. I'm all in next gen with PC. And it's like, dude, Sony literally releases their games on PC, man. What are you talking about? Like, how are you going to threaten them with a platform that they've been supporting for the last 6 years? They'll gladly take your money over there too. I guess the only thing I can imagine is that some of these people believe that if it's like, well, Sony, you're undoing the foundations of what made your console ecosystem what it is, so I'm leaving, and so is everybody else. And it's like, it turns out that everybody else isn't leaving. It's just you and some other people. Mostly everybody's still going to stay, because their reason for buying a console was maybe different from yours. And I think that there are just people involved in this space where they can't really comprehend that not everybody buys a console for exclusivity. You know, people buy consoles for many different reasons. I mean, if you have 100 million people who bought a console, you're going to have potentially 100 million different reasons why people bought the console. It doesn't mean that exclusivity didn't play a role. It's just we may be vastly overestimating that role. And that's why there's a part of me that almost, and this is going to sound blasphemous, there's a part of me that almost wants to see Sony just do it. You know, like, no balls, do it, bro. I want to see I want to know. Like, I kind of want that answer. Like, I want to know if it's like, it turns out it was bullshit the whole time. It turns out that PlayStation was going to do just as well as it is with or without exclusivity. It didn't matter. You know, it's like that, the two guys in space moment. You know, always has been. You know, I really do wonder. I'm more concerned about physical games than I am exclusivity at this point. I think exclusivity still matters, for the simple fact that you're going to see Nintendo not move an inch. So exclusivity will still matter in this industry, at least to that end. You also do have certain PC games that are never going to make their way to console, so they're technically exclusive. Although I don't know that they're purposely being withheld as much as it's just they don't want to be bothered porting it, for whatever reason. But I was like thinking about this, and I'm like, bro, why am I more concerned? I'm legitimately more concerned that Sony's going to come out and be like, yeah, we're not doing physical games with the PS6. I'm more concerned about that than if they're like, we're just going to put Spider-Man 3 everywhere. Because I realize that one of those things affects me way more than the other in terms of like how I'm left feeling about the platform at the end of the day. But Yeah, I don't know, man. Um, am I trying to suggest that exclusives do not matter? No, it's not. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I'll put it to you this way. I think in the way exclusivity mattered in a way that these companies, it was important for them. Like, let me try to articulate this correctly. Back in the day, PS1, PS2, PS3, even PS4, especially the earlier days, PS1, PS2, PS3, exclusives mattered because the market was young, and these companies were basically trying to, they were, if you think about it, Sony and Microsoft were just kind of entering the market and doing what everybody else had done prior. The console wars were very real in the 80s and obviously in the early 90s. And so when it came to Sony entering, they're like, well, if we want to be competitive, we got to have exclusives. And then when Microsoft came, they're like, if we want to be competitive, we got to have exclusives. And then that continued. The market has grown to a point, though, where it's like, let me ask you this question, because I think this is an important angle to look at this from. If Amazon came in, or would Amazon be or maybe Apple? What's the most likely company to be like, we're going to make a console? Maybe it'd be Apple. Let's just say Apple, right? Let's say Apple comes in and they do a big kind of Google Stadia-esque push where they're like, here's our console. It's a little bit more powerful than the PS5. It's $500, and it's Apple. And here are our exclusive games. We built a new studio from the ground up. They made an exclusive game, and we signed Ubisoft for an exclusive game, and we signed Capcom for an exclusive game, or Konami or something. And they came out with this console, and they were like, we're going to get third-party support. We're building that, but here are exclusives. What do you think's going to happen? Like, do you think that's going to work? Like, do you think that suddenly people are like, you know what? F the PS5, F the Switch 2, and F PC. I'm going with the Apple console. Hell no. I mean, you get the Apple fanboys, but that thing's DOA. That thing's not going to touch. That thing probably won't even sell a quarter of what even the Xbox Series console sold. And that's the reality. That is the reality. That's why you don't see any of these companies entering the console market, because it's not that the console market is dying. The console market has peaked. There's only a finite amount of value that these corporations could extract from the console market. And it turns out Sony, from the premium side, has extracted everything they could. And Nintendo has extracted everything they could from the more casual slash, I mean, they've had Nintendo fanboys for many years, but they've expanded. Nintendo has successfully expanded into the more casual market, and they've extracted pretty much everything they could, or at least that's my assumption. I don't think there's any more growth for the Switch 2 beyond the Switch 1. No, is there a chance that Sony could produce a PlayStation 6 that sells 200 million units at this point in time? No. That's just the reality. Like, I don't need to be part of Sony's board or boardroom or be privy to all of their analytics and their data to know that. All you need to do is look at the fact that, bro, what's going on with the market? What do the market conditions look like? What's going on with the geopolitics that are having a profound impact on global economics? Oh, right. Yeah, no, the PS6, Sony will be lucky if the PS6 can keep any pace with the PS4 and 5. That's the reality. Not, and that's, I'm just looking at it from an economic standpoint. What about the diminishing returns? Look at the way people were talking about the PS5 compared to the PS4, where they're like, I don't see any difference. These just look like souped up PS4 games. The PS5 looks like a PS4.5 or whatever, or PS5 Pro 0.5. People were already saying that at the beginning of the PS5 generation. Look at what's happening with the PS5 Pro. People were literally laughing at some of this stuff that was being shown, where it's like, look at these zoomed in images on Spider-Man running on the PS5 versus running on the Pro. And people were like, dude, I literally don't see a difference. I don't think people understand. I don't think the console enthusiasts, because I am a console enthusiast, I don't think they understand that, like, dude, Sony is going to have a very, very uphill battle. Not to sell the PS6, because the PS6 will sell. Not to have a successful console generation. The console generation will be successful, but to outdo what they've achieved with the PS5. And let me ask you, what are the shareholders going to do if Sony goes all in with the PS6 without considering any other options? They stick to the purely traditional route, and it turns out that we're selling like half of what we sold of the PS5 so far, even with exclusives. Let me ask you, and I thought about this, if exclusives were truly the be-all, end-all, not saying they're not important, but if they were the be-all, end-all, why didn't it save the Wii U? Why didn't it save the Xbox One? Why did the Wii U sell 13 million units even though Nintendo produced an exclusive Zelda game? They had exclusive Mario games, bro, for the Wii U. And it went on to sell 13 million. Actually, that's not true, guys. So, at least at the beginning of the Xbox generation, Microsoft, they had a pretty decent line. Like, the reality is, I think sometimes people misremember. The reality is, Sony had a pretty sparse exclusive lineup. Their own words, by the way. I didn't say that. Sony came out in 2013 and 2014 and said it's going to be a little bit sparse. Meanwhile, you had Microsoft. They had Sunset Overdrive. They had Quantum Break coming up, I think. They had Halo 5. They had Titanfall. Like, bro, they had a lineup. And let me tell you, they had Dead Rising 3. Let me tell you how the fact that Sony came out and said, we are not really going to have the exclusives rolling until like 2015 or so. Let me tell you how that did not make a goddamn difference in the world to how well the PS4 sold. Nobody gave a shit about the exclusives that Microsoft had because they're like, Microsoft, the Xbox One sucks. And that was it. That was it. Like, there was no... Microsoft could not produce a game at that time to stop what was going to happen. And you know how I know this? Because, dude, Sony, one of Sony's best exclusives, arguably, is Bloodborne, which didn't come out till 2015. And by that point, the PS4 had fucking steamrolled the Xbox One, dude. Steamrolled. It was already over. It was already over, dude. And from that point forward, everything Sony did was just, okay, how many more times you want to back it up and then steamroll it again, and then back it up and then steamroll it again? Every exclusive that Sony dropped, they were just backing up, run it over, backing it up, run it over, flatten it even more. And that's, you know, I just think that's the reality of it, man. It's not to say that exclusives don't matter. They do. It's that I'm not so sure because I was thinking about this deeply when this prospect of Sony going multi-platform came up, and now that Microsoft's multi-platform, I'm like, you know, people I think sometimes forget that Phil Spencer was like, dude, we lost the most important console generation there was to lose. We lost it. And he basically was like, once we lost it, there was no coming back from it. Zero chance of coming back. And I always kind of held on to that quote because I was like, you know, that's very interesting to think about how from the moment the Xbox One launched, it didn't matter what Microsoft did. It was over. You know, like, people built their digital libraries. You're not prying them away. You think I'm trying to downplay the exclusives value? I'm a little bit behind on the super chats. Hang tight, guys. We have Neutral Zone. He says, if they do become full third party, are you going to say the same thing you said about Xbox, that there's no need for a PS console and they're dead. Neutral Zone, I need you to find me the quote. Neutral Zone, I want you to find the stream, date it for me. Find the stream where I said Xbox is dead, or the video where I said Xbox is dead, and date it for me. Okay? Do that. Because you know what I'm getting tired of? I'm getting tired of the fact that I've defended Xbox. Literally. Oh, I'm not denying that I've never said that. That's why I'm asking him to date it. If you're going to pull a video up from 2020 and I said Xbox is dead, whatever, bro. If you're holding on to a video I made from like 2020 or 2021, then that's on you. I'm not going to even bother defending that. But if you're going to try to make it sound like in the last year or 2 years when people kept coming out and be like, Xbox is dead. Xbox is dead. Like, dude, you know what I was saying? I'm saying no, Xbox isn't dead. They're either A, dead as we knew it, the Xbox console. The Xbox console is dead as we knew it, or they've transformed. That's what I've said. Verbatim. That's what I've said every time. If anything, I have gone against the notion that Xbox is dead. The Xbox brand is not dead. The Xbox brand is never going to die. I've even went out of my way to ensure that everybody understands that Microsoft paid $75 billion to ensure the Xbox brand will never die. That's what I've said. It's about to be all over Twitter. Well, keep in mind, Rudy, keep in mind that I went out of my way to play some Xbox games. You remember when Hellblade 2 came out? And you remember how people were absolutely shitting on that game? And I was like, it wasn't great. It wasn't as good as the first one, but I still liked it. Was that all over Twitter? No. Oh, no. How could it be? The Xbox console is dead, dude. That is the truth. It's not my problem if that gets people's panties in a fucking bunch. Like, even Xbox players, I've encountered Xbox players that understand that, yeah, the Xbox console as we knew it is dead. The next piece of hardware will be a Xbox-branded PC hybrid where Microsoft is going to convert the remaining Xbox console players into Xbox PC players. And that's fine. That's an option. That's what they're doing. But if you're going to sit here and try to make it seem like the next Xbox console is going to be a reflection of what the original Xbox was, the 360, the One, or the Series consoles, it will not be. It will be a PC hybrid. It will be a new age for Xbox hardware, something very different, something that Microsoft is not going to sit here and say, we're really trying to penetrate the market. They're not trying to penetrate shit. They're just sitting there saying, if you want it, buy it. If not, please buy our games everywhere else they're available. Thank you. Come again. Like, that's what they're saying. You see the difference? You see how the Xbox brand in the year 2025 is very different from the Xbox brand in 2020 when Microsoft was kicking down the door with an Xbox Series X, world's most powerful 12 teraflop console with Hellblade 2 as an exclusive? You don't see the difference? Notice how the Xbox brand is still here and not dead. Like I said, transformed. Now, if Sony does the same thing, what am I going to say, Neutral Zone? I'm going to say the same thing. PlayStation brand is not dead. PlayStation brand can't die. But if Sony comes out with a console and they're like, we don't have any exclusives because everything's going everywhere, I'm going to say, yeah, that's the PlayStation brand is completely transformed. It's not the same anymore. If Sony's new priority is publishing just like Microsoft's, then yeah, the brand's not dead. The brand as we knew it is dead. PlayStation as we knew it is dead. It is a new era of PlayStation. PlayStation transformed, bro. Clip it and ship it. You think Sony's leadership is very short-sighted? Yeah, that's true. MBG, keep in mind, we're getting older. The new generation needs to keep these brands alive. That's true. If there's anything that's going to kill these brands, it's future generations. So you can kind of see why all these companies are like, we gotta stay in touch with the kids, man. What do the kids want? Michael Lynch. Oh, and really quick, before I move on to Michael Lynch's chat, Neutral Zone, just to cover the other part of what you said, that there's no need. Am I going to say that there's no need to get a PlayStation console? Dude, apparently there was no need to get a PlayStation console from the time that Sony announced Horizon Zero Dawn was going to PC. So what I will tell you is that if Sony, I literally just said on this stream that if I was still in the Xbox One and Sony released their games on Xbox, I would have stayed on Xbox. There would have been no reason for me, no need for me to get a PS4. What we may be looking at, guys, I think if we look at it from a bird's eye view, I think what we may be looking at is how exclusivity was incredibly important, and maybe it no longer is. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to turn out to be a true statement. This is why I've continued to say I want to know how the PlayStation console sells. I want to know how the PlayStation console sells with no exclusives. Because if that console still sells the same way it is now, then it would prove that statement correct. But if the sales suddenly plummeted, screeched to a halt, then it would prove that statement incorrect. And it would prove that it turns out exclusivity really does fucking matter. I would love to know if Mario Kart wasn't exclusive to the Switch 2, how well the Switch 2 would have sold. If Mario Kart released the same day on all platforms, do Switch 2 sales collapse? I don't know. How would we know? How would we know? There's actual evidence, though. There's actual evidence of Nintendo launching a new console that nobody liked with a Mario Kart game as an exclusive. And it didn't do shit. Didn't do jack shit for that console. I don't know, man. I don't know. The Wii U had horrible marketing. Yeah. It's so funny to think that the Wii U failed because people just literally didn't know it was a new console. Like, oh, look at that Wii accessory. I don't need that. No. This is a new console. Like, no, that's okay. I don't need that accessory. Like, no. It's a new console. Don't you understand? It's new console. Cursed. Your chat watched the same thing happen to Xbox. You can't fool them, bro. I'm not trying to fool anybody. All right. Michael Lynch says, sure, the Pro is $700, but it's not meant for the masses. They can't afford for their main console to be real expensive. Well, I'm in agreement, Michael, that if Sony wants to continue to sell as many consoles as they have with the PS4 and the PS5 when they release the PlayStation 6, it has to be affordable. The problem with that is delivering a next-gen leap that's also affordable at this moment in time is not possible. That's the problem. So you have to ask yourself what that means for, the midterm of Sony. So, okay, how much would it cost to deliver a next-gen leap that feels justifiable? How much would that console cost to produce? $800. $900 maybe. I mean, what are you going to do if you're going to sell a console losing hundreds of dollars on every sale? Sony will not do that. Sony will not do that, man. Sony's looking to lose very little money on the hardware they sell. The reality that I think Sony is probably waking up to, or not waking up to, but maybe deciding on. You want to talk about how they have all the data, they have all the numbers. You know what Sony's probably realizing? The PS5 is going to be their main console for many, 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 many more years to come. If you asked me right now, how does Sony sell a new generation of PlayStation? I don't know. The PlayStation enthusiast will say exclusives, and I will say upfront, yes. But after the first year, what then? Is Sony going to not launch Spider-Man 3 on the PS5? Of course, dude, every game that Sony produces going forward is going to be a cross-gen game. No doubt about that. I have no doubt about that. So if they're not true PS6 exclusives, then okay, well, how do you sell people on the new gen? AI? Maybe, but to what extent? Path tracing? Does anybody even talk about ray tracing anymore? I mean, maybe that would be really cool looking, but I think most people are going to feel like, I already fell for this with ray tracing. I'm not falling for it again. Not to say that ray tracing is bad, but it's just like you can't sell the SSD again. You can't sell the speed factor because you already have that. How much better can the graphics look on a PlayStation 6 game versus a PS5 game? The biggest leap you will see with the PlayStation 6 is with the CPU. So what does that mean? That means you're talking about game innovation. You are talking about doing things in games that are literally not possible to do with the CPU that exists on the PlayStation 5 right now. That's going to require a lot of time, a lot of thought, and that's not going to happen that often. I don't know if it was up to me right now to try to deliver a PlayStation 6 in the next couple years. I have no idea how you would sell it, because all I know is I see. Well, again, I don't have all the data. Anything I have is anecdotal, but the amount of people that I've come across in the past 2 years that are like, dude, it feels like this has been the worst gen, or that this gen hasn't even begun. I would have no idea. My first intuition would be exclusivity, but if it's like, sir, this is how much Naughty Dog's next game costs, they're literally not going to break even if you make it exclusive. I wouldn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I wouldn't know what to do, because I'd be like, oh, how else can we make up the money for that? Well, we've done everything we can. We've already put all the games we could on PC. We backported everything we could. And we increased the price of PlayStation Plus. We may even have to increase the price of the PS5. I don't know, man. I just think that there's way too many factors working against Sony that too many people are not considering, or too many enthusiasts are not considering, where it's like, I don't know, man. It was easy for Sony. Like, you have to ask yourself, how come Sony and Microsoft were so willing to sell these things at a loss in earlier generations? The PS3 is infamous for losing billions of dollars. It was all on subsidize the cost of the box, right? Subsidize it. The reason why they were so willing to go with that model was because there was still projected growth in the games industry for consoles. There was projected growth where it's like, we can go further. We can go further. Now, there is really no projected growth for the traditional home console. That's just the reality of it. And if you're Sony or Microsoft, especially in Sony in this case, like, what do you do with that information? Say, no, we are going to actually produce growth. And it's like, well, how? How are you going to do that? How are you going to sell more PS6 consoles than you sold PS5s? How? How? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. You're going to need the entire market is going to have to shift. The economic realities are going to have to change very quickly. That's the only way. Just more and more and more exclusives, just sell good games. They've been doing that, dude. And granted, it has been working, but you're starting to see people be like, Ghost of Yotei, it's just like more of the same. Spider-Man 2 felt like more of the same. Sony, where are the games? Sony ain't got no games. You're seeing that. And that's where I'm just like, well, I think Sony is they're still going to push. I'm not saying Sony has given up on the PS6. Obviously not. the console's still critical to Sony's success. It's just that we have to try to understand that Sony is not, they're not preparing for the next 5 to 6 years. They're trying to come up with a mid to long term strategy that it's like, okay, we know the PS6 will probably do well enough, but beyond that, what's the gaming industry going to look like? So people are saying that Sony's making short-sighted decisions, and it's like, dude, how do people not realize by now that these companies at any moment can just get very damn close to flatlining? Neither Nintendo, Sony, nor Microsoft are immune to it. We've seen every one of these companies almost destroy themselves. Saw it with the PS3, we saw it with the Wii U, we saw it with the Xbox One. If anything, all three of those consoles, those were consoles that were released with short-sighted decisions. This is what worked last time, so it'll work again. Or, let's double down on this one thing because surely that's what will win the next generation. And the ironic thing about all three of those consoles is they all had exclusives. They all had exclusives, man. So I don't know. It's a bit more complicated, the inner workings of it, than I think most people, myself included, realize. Lux, you're saying live service or small games like Lego will port, but let's say hypothetically Microsoft puts the Master Chief Collection on Switch 2 and gets crazy sales. Sony will look at that. Dude, I'm sure Sony is you're right about that, Lux. I'm sure Sony is looking at the sales that Microsoft is getting on their own platform right now, on Sony's platform. Sony's probably looking. Sony can see how much money Forza Horizon 5, a 4-year-old game, just made. And let me tell you, hundreds of millions of dollars from just a single port, dude. So when you consider that, they're probably looking at like Horizon Zero Dawn or yes, Spider-Man 2018 being like, how many copies of Spider-Man 2018 have we sold on PlayStation in the last 6 months? How many units of Spider-Man 2018 have we sold on PC in the last 6 months? How much money did we make? Probably nothing. Hardly anything. Hardly any sales, hardly any money. It's just sitting there. So when Sony sees a highly acclaimed title, one of Microsoft's only highly acclaimed titles from, this generation so far, making its way to PlayStation 4 years later and selling 3 million copies, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm just saying, it's really not a leap to think that they're like looking at Spider-Man being like, But that's where the only short-sighted thing that comes from that, in my opinion, is surely Sony would be aware that, like, bro, one of the reasons why Forza Horizon 5 sold so well on PlayStation is because your audience buys games. And I'm not saying that in a fanboy way. I'm saying it like literally. Like the reason why Microsoft ported that game here is because they need more game sales. And they brought it to the storefront where people buy games. And I feel like Sony would be in a potential fuck around find out situation, potentially, if they decided we're going to port Spider-Man to Xbox because we're about to rake in a couple million more sales, and it's just like, you got less than 1 million, bro. Hope it was worth it. I mean, that would be funny. I would actually encourage that because that would be some funny shit to watch. But I don't know. I mean, could it be a novelty factor? Oh my God, Spider-Man's dropping on Xbox. It sells 4 million units. It's like, what? When the fuck does an Xbox game sell that many units? When it's a Sony game, for the first time, it'll do that. But is that... I'm telling you, man, Sony watched this happen on PC. They watched it happen on PC. Where, you see a game like Days Gone, I think, selling better than Spider-Man 2 or some shit. And it's like, what? It's like, yeah, it was the novelty factor. People were just excited to see PlayStation's Days Gone. what was supposed to be a Sony only game. Here it is on PC. Oh, you know? And then, 4 to 5 years later, Sony's like, we got our new PC game coming. We got the next one. It's like, okay. I mean, we're kind of over it now. You know what I mean? And then, yeah, I mean, they're still porting the PC. It's not that they would give it up. It's just that I don't know, man. Trying to predict Sony has not been very forthcoming about their long-term strategy. They've been pretty forthcoming about their midterm, but long-term, I'm still not exactly. The only thing I figure with Sony's long-term strategy is they want IP growth, which is not surprising, but they want live service. And I think I don't think it's secret, but PlayStation executives I don't think really cared too much about the single-player games. I think that truthfully, Hiroki Totoki probably sees the single player titles from Sony as a liability. If I'm being totally honest, he probably looks at the amount of money because we're talking about the CFO, the bean counter, the money guy. He probably sees how much money, went into Spider-Man 2 and is like, what the fuck? Like, are you guys crazy? Like, we don't need Spider-Man, bro. We don't need him that bad. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't need to make it that expensive. That's probably how he really feels. And what he's probably doing is he's looking at how much money did Call of Duty just rake in last quarter? Wait, how much money did Fortnite just make? How much money did GTA Online make? He's probably looking at that and being like, why don't we have that? And we need to work on that. I hate to say it, but that's probably the reality. And I don't think they're really hiding that. I think, again, that's why Helldivers is going to Xbox, because they're like, we need that fucking mega successful live service. We have William Aglor with a $10 super chat, and he says, shareholders own Sony. They don't want it to go full third party because it makes most of its money by being a store, which requires exclusives. Herman Hulst's video last year was a reply to shareholders' third party concern. Yeah, I mean, if Sony were to, I keep entertaining the hypothetical of Sony going full third party. If Sony were to do that, especially if they were to do it overnight, I mean, yeah, I think a lot of their shareholders would be very concerned, because I have listened to a lot of the shareholder questions and I've tuned into a lot of the Sony earnings, and people, I think, have this misconception that the shareholders are pushing Sony where it's like, you got to go right now and go be everywhere. That's not what they're doing. If anything, the shareholders have expressed some concern of like, Sony, are you sure you're not hurting your console sales? But there are also other shareholders that have chimed in saying that they are wondering, if Sony's going to be able to continue to sell as many consoles. What is the health of the console space looking like? So it's a mix of both, I would say. And I do think it is disingenuous for people to jump to the conclusion that this is just purely shareholders. It's not. We always have to keep in mind that when people get promoted and people, take on the positions, their main goal is make more money for the company. The more money they make for the company, the higher the likelihood they get to keep their job, keep their position, and maybe even work their way up the ladder again. That's what we need to understand. So when we see Hideaki Nishino taking over, we see Herman Hulst taking over, we see Hiroki Totoki now at the helm, CEO. Hiroki Totoki wants to be remembered as the greatest Sony CEO of all time. What's the best way to do that? I want to make PlayStation, not PlayStation, but Sony as a whole. I want to increase our value on the stock market. I want to make Sony more valuable than they've ever been. And you better believe that Hideaki Nishino is in line with that. Hideaki Nishino is not going to be like, no, I don't think we should do that, sir. And Herman Hulst isn't going to do that either. I'm not saying it's purely just yes men. I'm just saying that there's a literal financial incentive for these people. And that is why when some people say maybe it is short-sighted, it could be. I mean, Jim Ryan, for the flack that people want to give Jim Ryan, he made sure that the PS5 generation was by far the most profitable Sony ever had. But some of the decisions he made in pursuit of that, you have to ask, what are the long-term implications here? He's not here to answer that question because he's like, I'm out, bro. I got promoted to CEO. I made my money. I'm retiring. I left my mark. The rest is on these guys now. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. The market is strange these days. It's strange. There does seem to be some weird stuff going on. Not just in, for the gaming industry and the gaming market, but just in general. We're seeing some really bizarre things going on, universally speaking. And I think a lot of people don't really know how to react to it or what to do about it. All right, I am running behind on these super chats. I apologize keeping you guys waiting. Okay. We have Tarnished. Hey, Tarnished, a member for 13 months saying, like you said, no one knows, but I'll counter that with Sony past actions breaking so many red lines, less red lines remaining, endangering new expectations. Or engendering, sorry. Is that engendering? I don't know. What is this word? Why don't I know this word? I feel like I know this word. I said, what did I say? Endangering? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so Tarnished, with what you're saying, I mean, let's listen. I've spent the majority of this stream talking about Sony going third party. I've spent the majority of this stream talking about how Sony's going to do this for the same reasons that Microsoft is, to find growth and all this stuff. On the flip side of that, what if this is a nothing burger? That's not cope. I'm just trying to consider all options, just like I did for Microsoft. What if this is a nothing burger and it's just, yeah, guys, we already told you we're bringing our live service games. We already told you that. We told our shareholders that. We told you that. We just announced that with Helldivers. What if that's all this is? And everybody who's like, sitting here clamoring and anticipating that whole slate, what if that just doesn't happen? I mean, look, man, I don't get to decide these things, but I'm just considering, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, have any of the people who are jumping to the conclusion that it's over, full slate, have you considered the possibility that you might be jumping the gun? That might not be what you're looking at? And if so, what then? What does that mean? And I feel like this is where it's like, well, the reason why people aren't going to entertain that notion as much is because it's like, well, if not now, then next year. And if not next year, then the year after. And if not this generation, then next. And if not that, then eventually. You see what I'm saying? There's this kind of notion that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so when people see something like this, it acts as a trigger of and now, right? But I don't know, man. It's like, well, I think Ghost of Yote is still going to be a PS5 exclusive. Death Stranding's currently a PS5 exclusive. I'm not saying they won't ever move. I'm just saying that's there now. You know what I mean? I don't know. Is Soros going to be exclusive? Is Wolverine going to be exclusive? Wolverine will be. I'll tell you what. Wolverine, sometimes I keep forgetting that game still is coming before the end of this generation. Wolverine will be the test, by the way. Just so we're all clear. Wolverine has clearly been in some kind of development trouble. I think it's okay now, but it ran into some problems. Very expensive game. This is going to be a game with a 6 or 7 year development cycle. If Wolverine is still a PS5 exclusive, there's your answer, by the way. Because if there's any game that Sony, if they're really truly going in this direction that people think they're going in, that will be the single player game. That will be the game. No doubt about it. So if Wolverine is still a PS5 exclusive, I'm gonna be honest. I would assume that okay, well, that game needs to make its money back, like desperately. Like that game needs to make its money back. That's a licensed game at this point that's been in some kind of development hell for a little bit. If Sony's gonna pull the trigger on going multi-platform and making their money back, that would be the game to do it with. That's my view of it anyway. We have GameCat, specifically a White Tiger, saying, unless they do a PSVR 3 on PS6, I'm out. Exclusives in PSVR 2 is the main reason I stayed and got a PS5. Since no VR2 PSSR update yet, I didn't buy a Pro. And that's fair. I've seen a lot of people saying that like they're out, they're done with PlayStation if this is the direction they're going in. And I think that's totally fair. Just like I saw it happen with Xbox, bro. Like people who were saying I'm done with Xbox, I'm like, yeah, totally fair. And I think Microsoft Microsoft pretty much made it clear. It's like, all right, well, do what you got to do. Hopefully you'll buy our game wherever you go. I don't think there's going to be a PSVR 3. Yeah, I'll be honest, GameCat, I don't think that's happening. PSVR 2 did not. I think it's obviously a great headset. It gets good support and has a enthusiastic player base, but it didn't. I don't think it did the numbers it was supposed to do, or that it didn't live up to the expectations for Sony. It'll cost Sony money to port their games. That's true. Schmidt GT says, I think it's because people are tribal. Me too. Well, yeah. I mean, there's always some level of that. Digital Dude 25 says, could this be the result of GTA 6? It's going to make so much money that they could care less if they put their games on Xbox. Well, actually, that's an interesting notion or an interesting angle, Digital Dude. I wouldn't say GTA 6 alone. But it could be just in general that Sony. Well, let's talk about it from a different angle. Kind of one you're mentioning here, Digital Dude. A lot of this discussion has hinged on, well, Sony's doing this out of desperation. Like if Sony does port more games to Xbox or Switch 2, it's out of desperation. It's because they need to. They have to. What if it's the opposite? What if it's, because keep in mind what I said, like when it comes to their financial reports, I mean, the PlayStation 5 generation has been the most profitable by miles. This could just be them looking at it as like, yeah, we don't need to win you over anymore. Like, I don't want to say it's like it could kind of be from a little bit of an arrogant angle where it's like, yeah, we're good. Like we won the high end market. Nintendo's not a threat to us. Xbox is definitely not a threat to us. It's just us now. So, yeah, we're not worried about it. And they might be correct about that. That if it's like, yeah, we're not going to stop ourselves from making more money with our games because, like less than 5% of the player base is going to be upset about it. And that's why I'm like, dude, it's interesting to see so many people being like, I'm going to PC and I'm done, or I'm done with Sony. I got to be honest, I'm morbidly curious. Like, if Sony did the crazy thing, they did the crazy thing, and they're like, we're going all in multi-platform. I would love to see how many millions of players they could potentially lose. Because what if it's like, we lost 1 million players? I feel like Sony would literally be like, oh no, anyway. But if it's something like we lost 10 million players, that might be like, oh shit. Hold on. I don't know. I'm just trying to see it from all the different angles of like, is this from a position of strength or is this from a position of desperation? By the way, guys, 0 members so far today. Boss is just, He went away, bro. He gave up. Even he gave up. Remember, if you want to support the channel, you guys have been dropping a lot of super chats, which I very much appreciate. Also consider becoming a member. We have members content we did earlier in the week, or last week, I should say. And we will be doing more members content this week. Moolah says, your true reaction was, it's because you need to. Huh? I don't know if this was in regards to something we were talking about earlier. I'm not sure. Are you talking about Microsoft putting their games? My true reaction was saying because Microsoft needs to. I don't know. Ultimate Despair Bear says, at this point, nobody's moving to Xbox. It's a ship that already sunk, and Sony has nothing to lose, and PS5 Pro will perform better than the Switch 2. Damn. Well, that kind of bleeds into, or that leans into, I should say, kind of what I was saying. You know, like, is this because Sony is just like, we're not really, like, what's the worst that can happen? How many people are we really going to lose? I didn't miss your super chat, by the way. It's coming up. I'm just a little bit behind. I apologize. This is what happens when I don't keep up with the super chats fast enough. Leo Jimmy with a $20 super chat says, MBG money, I'm a diehard PlayStation. Them releasing PS games on all is detrimental to the PlayStation console. This is the same thing Microsoft did. Look at Microsoft now. You see and still do it. Why? Games always matter. More super chats inbound. Well, thank you for that, Leo. I do want to mention something here, because this was something I had meant to talk about by now, but I kind of didn't. I did a little bit, but what you just said, I'm not fully convinced of. This, to me, is the big unknown. A lot of people refer to Microsoft, and they're like, look at what Microsoft did. Microsoft went third party, and it killed their console. That's why when people say Xbox is dead, they're not saying the brand. They're saying Microsoft killed their own console. That's what they mean when they say Xbox is dead. I question this. I question this only because, well, let's trace it back, right? The 360 was riding high, and it was Microsoft's best console generation. We saw what happened with the Xbox One launch, and my question is, how much did the games that Microsoft announced as exclusives for the Xbox One, how much did that matter in the overall sales of the Xbox One? Well, it's hard to say, but what I can tell you is that 2.5 years into the Xbox One, okay, 2.5 years, Microsoft made the announcement. And I remember because I was here watching and seeing everybody's reactions. Microsoft said, we are going day and date on PC and Game Pass. Well, I think Game Pass came next, but PC. And they did it with Quantum Break. I remember, and the Xbox fan base was freaking out. People were freaking out. PlayStation fans were saying, no reason to own an Xbox now, no reason to buy an Xbox. But my question is this, right? That was what the internet was saying, and that was the internet reaction. And you would have thought, based off the internet, that, holy shit, Microsoft making that announcement, they just killed the Xbox One. My question is, how do you know the Xbox One wasn't already dead prior to that announcement? See, that's the thing here, is I think when people look at the Xbox console and try to convince themselves that, well, if Sony does something similar to Microsoft, that the outcome is going to be the same, keep in mind, a lack of exclusives is not what killed the Xbox console. What killed the Xbox console was the reveal. What killed the Xbox console was the reveal of the Xbox One and the fact that damage that was done that day was irreversible, permanently. They did permanent damage where it's like, you can recover some, you're done. You're done. And the proof lies in the fact, like I said, that Sony didn't have to do jack shit to win. Sony just released a video game console by saying it plays video games and we will have exclusives coming. We have first-party games coming. That's all they did. And that thing fucking exploded. And like I said, it steamrolled the Xbox One. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because when we fast forward and then we look at the Series X and the Series S, Microsoft did it again, just not as bad. They never recovered. Keep in mind, the Xbox One never recovered. The Xbox One sold like 45 million units or something, which is like half of what the 360 sold. Meanwhile, the PS4 went on to sell like 120, give or take. 120 million. When we fast forward and we look at the rollout of the Xbox Series X and S, they come out and they're like, world's most powerful console. We even have an affordable console. So they're even trying to get you with the lower price point. And then they're like, we got games like Halo Infinite, and check out Hellblade. That's right. That's ours now. And then what do? They come out, no launch lineup. But then when these games started to roll out, like Halo Infinite, they tried with Starfield. They're like, Starfield's exclusive. It didn't do anything. It did not stop the PS5 from once again steamrolling them even worse this time. What I'm trying to say is people think that Microsoft going day and date with PC is what killed the Xbox One. Wrong. Microsoft killed the Xbox One. People think that Microsoft announcing they're going multi-platform this generation is what killed the Xbox Series. No, Microsoft killed the Xbox Series. Or in this case, you could say Sony did kill the Xbox Series. The reality is Xbox never fucking recovered. So it didn't matter what they... Again, dude, they made Starfield exclusive and it did nothing. It did nothing. Sony truly did win the console war, dude, like the traditional console war. Because now Sony could kind of do whatever they wanted. In a way. Microsoft could do whatever they wanted and it would have... They're saying they're buffering. Hold on. I'm telling you, it's every time I'm ranting about something. Let me know when we're good. Let me know when the buffering's done. Gaming Survivor, that sounds cursed. All right, I think we're good now. You remember an IGN article with 50,000 comments? Holy shit. But, you know, Leo Jimmy, to get back to your super chat, man, the whole point I'm trying to make here is that Sony isn't doing the same thing Microsoft did because they didn't make the same mistakes Microsoft made. And Schmidt GT comes in and he says, you know what? I'll be the one to do it. I'll be the first one to drop member gifts today. And he drops a 5 bomb, which will hopefully be the beginning of a member train. And Schmidt, I made this, well, I'll say that I made this specifically for you.
Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me?
This is how PlayStation players feel right now. Are you threatening me? You threatening me? It's how Sony feels. Are you threatening me? How the tables have turned. Indeed. Good, Schmidt. Good. That means I did my job. But yeah, that's all I'm trying to say, Leo Jimmy, is that we may be about to discover potentially again if it's like Sony goes third party. I just genuinely wonder what would the conversation be if Sony were to go full third party and PlayStation sales were exactly the same or hardly any different, and still like they still are doing mostly just fine, just as well as they have ever done. What is the conversation then? Because I'm telling you, man, people think that I I will say that what didn't help Microsoft is they did have exclusives during the Xbox One gen, but specifically towards the second half of that gen, they had like they were getting uh like their games, yeah, it's like listen, man, even if you were trying to use these games to sell consoles, these are not system sellers. Like these are not going to sell consoles. So even them trying to put stuff on PC day one didn't really equate to much. I don't know. We'll see, Leo. We'll see. We have Akiyuchi. Akiyuchi. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. UPS801 saying there's absolutely a massive generational leap in graphics from PS4 to PS5 with the right examples as early as Ratchet and now with GTA 6's rendering. I do agree with that. I do agree. I think that was in response to when I was saying that people were basically saying like, oh, you know, there's no difference with the PS5. I saw the difference with the PS5 from day one with games like Demon Souls and, like you're saying, Ratchet and Clank. And I have no doubt that when the PS6 eventually comes out, I will see the difference there too. I'm just talking more broadly that, like, I think that people who are a little bit more on the casual side or not paying as much attention, I think that they have a larger expectation in general, you know, where it's like, well, you know, if this is how good a PS5 Pro game looks, then the PS6 has to look like way better than this. And it's like, well, I think you will see a difference, certainly. Like you can see a difference, but I just don't know that it's going to be leaps and bounds. And again, the problem with that is if the PS6 is $700 or $800, that's going to hurt them badly. Like it for that price, it's going to have to be the biggest leap anybody's ever seen. And I don't think that's possible. All right. We have Alan Gould, member for 18 months. He says, I have a question. Why would Sony waste time to port single player games on Xbox when they will have access to Steam? Well, you know what? Let's talk about that for a moment. That's an angle that I haven't considered. Well, no, I have considered, but we haven't discussed. I do question, truly, like the job listing. So the job listing is for Senior Director, Multi-Platform and Account Management. Reporting to the Vice President, Commercial Management as Senior Director of Multi-Platform and Account Management, you will play a critical leadership role in shaping and executing a global commercial strategy for PlayStation Studios software titles across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Steam, Epic Games Store, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. This role is accountable for optimizing title profitability, ensuring cross-functional alignment, and leading a high-performing team focused on multi-platform expansion. So, high-performing team. That's important to highlight there. This is not just for one person or one role. This is a person that's going to be forming a team for focused on multi-platform expansion, mid-range commercial planning, and platform partner management. Oversee the out-of-year or mid-range commercial strategy for PlayStation Studios titles across all non-PlayStation platforms, driving long-term revenue growth and audiences reach. lead platform relationships across PC and console ecosystems, Steam, Epic, Xbox, Nintendo, ensuring strong collaboration, promotional effectiveness, and performance optimization. Direct and develop a team of senior managers across multi-platform strategy, account management, platform sales, and planning. And they even say here, director, multi-platform strategy, senior manager, platform sales, Xbox and PC, manager, platform planning, and performance, PC and Xbox. I have to be honest with you guys. Like, what truly perplexes me about this move by Sony. No, I don't think that translates to whole slate, simply because it's a complete coin flip. Like, they're not saying what titles will or will not be part of it. It could mean whole slate. It could mean, just live service. I don't know. But what I don't understand, truly, and this, it's kind of like what Alan is saying here. It's just, why would Sony do this for a platform that seems to be kind of on the ropes? It's so weird. Like, they're struggling. Sounds Spartan, what's up, man? Am I going to get some reps in? We'll see, man. We'll see. That might depend on you. These days, it depends on you and a few others, because we've been getting reps in. WD-40 bomb. Uh-oh. But yeah, dude, it's Xbox. I don't know, man. They're not doing well sales-wise. And he does it. Silent Spartan does it.
Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me?
Holy shit.
Silent Spartan comes in and drops a 50 bomb on you guys. He does it again, bro. Silent Spartan has been just doing so much heavy lifting for the community. Schmidt dropped the 5, and somehow that summoned Silent Spartan to come in and drop the 50. Thank you so much for that, man. We need some W's in the chat for Silent Spartan. Absolutely incredible community member. Generosity clearly knows no bounds. And I do want to let everybody in the chat know, if you were lucky enough to receive a membership gift, we did some Astrobot gameplay recently for members. We did a members lounge. We're going to be doing more members content. We're going to be doing the Death Stranding 2 spoiler cast either tomorrow or Tuesday. And after that, we're probably going to be doing some members gameplay for Death Stranding 2 as well. So if you do get that membership gift, make sure to take advantage of it. And if you enjoyed enough, consider renewing it once the free month is up. And we can also feed the beast. I'll have to do some reps now at the end. But once again, Silent Spartan flexing on the community, dropping another 50 membership gifts. Absolutely love to see it. Boss, let's go.
Boasty, read me. It's time to feed the beast.
We don't talk about the yeah, we don't talk about the first batch of treats that Boss got earlier. Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. Was not expecting that. Oh yeah, by the way, Silent Spartan. I did mean to tell you. I did complete Death Stranding 2. I do have a lot to say about it. But considering the last super chat you sent, I won't give anything away, but I just let you know that I did complete it. And like I said, we'll be doing a spoiler cast soon. And I'm going to be honest, man. Like, I was this close to doing a spoiler cast today. I was this close to doing it today. But I was like, man, it's going to be tough because I know people want to talk about this topic. But I'm going to be looking forward to it because that's going to be an interesting conversation. Very interesting conversation. Yeah, I hope to see you there, man. And to anybody else who dropped any super chats, don't worry. I'm making my way down the list here. I'm just running a little bit behind. Let me just update the member goals, show you guys where we're at. We're at 55 on the day, which is fantastic. So thank you guys so much for that. We'll strive to see if we can hit 75 before the stream ends. If we do, we'll give Leia her catnip. She's been waiting for that. Carlos, a member for 7 months, says PlayStation games are coming to the next Xbox/PC anyway. Kind of makes sense for Sony to port exclusives and make some money before the start of next gen. Oh wait, yeah, hold on. I have to test something out before I respond to that. Give me 1 sec. I need to make sure this is still working. Okay. All right. It's still working. I tried using that last time and it wasn't playing for some reason. So Carlos, you're saying that basically this is Sony. Well, I mean, we do have to try to keep in mind that Xbox is not the only platform listed here. You know what I mean? It's not the only platform listed. They are listing Switch too. I feel like that's kind of going under the radar. They're listing Steam, Epic Game Store. It is obviously people are going to pay most attention to Xbox being listed. You think this could maybe be because they want to try to extract as much money as they can from the Xbox platform before more and more players move to PC, essentially? Yeah, I don't know what to think of this one, Carlos, because what you're saying is true, is that the next Xbox hardware will have Steam on it. It will have Steam on it, and therefore, if any game that Sony drops day and date on PC will be there. It will be there, and any game that's backported will be there. All of the current games that are backported will be there. So I'm not sure, man. Like I don't know if maybe Sony just feels, I don't know. As much as I try to cover all angles and turn over every stone, I still am not entirely sure what the strategy is here. Like what the end goal is. I mean, we can safely say the end goal is more revenue, more sales, but specifically with Sony targeting the Xbox player base, I just genuinely wonder, what is the end goal? I mean, look, I know that this is going to sound crazy, but is this the last ditch of like, okay, well, the next Xbox hardware is basically going to be a PC, so let's give Xbox players that are still there, let's give them a little taste. Let's give them a little taste. We'll put over Helldivers, maybe we'll throw over Spider-Man, so that way, when we roll out the PS6, and it's clear that the next Xbox is just a PC, maybe I'll go to PlayStation. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the exact reasoning is. The only thing we can say is they're looking to get sales. They're looking to grow their live service. That's pretty much all we do know. But yeah, I'm going to have to start working him out a little bit, bro. Boss is getting big. He is getting big. Leia's been big for a little while. She barely eats treats, though. She just started. I don't know. Sorry, Leia. No offense. Sometimes I think it happens when cats get older. I think that they put on a little bit of weight more easily, just like people. Because Luna, she's still pretty skinny. Anyway, I digress here. Okay. Luna also wants some treats, too. All right, here you go. All three. They got to line up. She doesn't like when I pet her. Luna doesn't like when I pet her when she's eating. Okay. She's going to end up attacking me. We have Antonio Lopes with a super chat. He says, it's a slippery slope. All games as a service is coming, ? So Horizon Online is coming, but not Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West. What sense does that make? A bunch of PlayStation IP TV shows and movies are also coming. Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, Days Gone. Yeah, I mean, look, man. The thing is, I want to just lean on the side of, screw it. I'll just say everything's going. I'll just say it's full slate. I'll just say this is it. This is Sony giving us the signal that this isn't it's just 4 games moment. This is just that we're making a multi-platform team. We're going to be porting all of our games. I would prefer to view it from that sense because that is the quote unquote worst case scenario, right? And when I look at that, I think, okay, well, if that is what I'm looking at, what does that mean for me? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Like, does this mean I'm going to be less excited for State of Plays now? Does this mean I'm going to be less excited for the PlayStation Studios titles that are yet to be announced? If it was announced that Wolverine is going to be a day one game on Xbox and PC, does that make me any less excited for it? And I think, there's just the realization that occurs where it's like, no, it doesn't. I mean, it feels strange because it's like, huh. It like this isn't the way Sony has done it, but it's like, for me personally, does it make me less excited for these games? No, it doesn't. But the thing about it is that I can't say for sure whether that's the outcome or not. I can't say for sure whether that's what's really going to happen. I think I would prefer to just assume, like, to me, the safe assumption is, yeah, just assume that they're going multi-platform. Because what's the alternative? To sit here and say they're not, and then they do anyway, and then it's like, well, you were wrong. It's like, yeah, I just did that with Helldivers, by the way. I just did that exact thing. I went through the motions of, not in a fanboy way, although some people see it that way, but, when I was asked, like, do you think Helldivers 2 is going to go to Xbox? I would say, no. Like, dude, Sony isn't giving Xbox shit. Look at them. They won't even give them a freaking Lego game. It's over. Like, they're just going to let Xbox do their thing and slowly become multi-platform. And then, boom. Yeah, we're giving them Helldivers 2. Genuinely caught me off guard, dude, where I'm like, oh shit. Okay, well, what does that mean? To me, it means that your assumption, like speaking to myself here, it means your assumption was totally wrong. The opposite of what you thought is exactly, like, you thought Sony was thinking this way. They were thinking the total opposite. So I'm thinking to myself, well, what are the chances that I say, this is just multi-platform or multiplayer games. This is just live service, maybe smaller titles. And then it's just like, no, it's exactly the opposite of that. I'm going to have to change. We're just going to become, MBG's going multi-plat. No. Well, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, listen, dude, if Sony were to go full multi-plat, I wouldn't be any less excited for PlayStation Studios titles. I would be a little worried about optimization, but outside of that, I would not be any less excited. That's just the reality. I can't deny it. Like, I said this leading up to Death Stranding 2, man. I said if Sony announced tomorrow that Death Stranding 2 is going to be a day one PC release or it's going everywhere, I'd be like, okay. Like, that seems kind of strange, unexpected, but yeah, I'm still buying it day one, and it's still probably going to be one of my favorite games I play this year. And yeah, I can't help it, man. It's the way I'm programmed, where it's like, one of the reasons I held out on the Xbox One before I moved to PlayStation was because I still wanted to believe that the games that Microsoft was producing were going to live up to my expectations. I don't know if people remember, because it's a long ass time ago. It's almost a decade ago at this point, but I was like, State of Decay 2 is going to be amazing, bro. This is it. This is the full-blown AAA version of this game, fully realized, and it wasn't that. And I was disappointed. I was like, this is not a horrible game, and it's not even, I would say, a bad game, but this is not at all what I expected. And that's the type of shit that started to push me away from Xbox, where it's like, that's why I'm over here being like, dude, I hope State of Decay 3 is that realization finally. I was always rooting for that studio. I was always rooting for that game. But it's, it's like if Ghost of Yotei somehow ends up being like, well, this is extremely disappointing. You know, like the story is horrible and the gameplay mechanics are even worse than Ghost of Tsushima. Like that stuff would that would leave a bad taste in my mouth. And I'd be like, Sony, what the fuck? You know? But I'm not expecting that at all. You see what I'm saying? Like everything I've seen of Ghost of Yotei, I'm like, this looks better than Tsushima in a lot of ways. This looks like a great improvement in many areas. So it really just comes down to, again, man, the game output and the health of the console. I do worry about the console. I do worry about the console only like people ask like, why do you care about sales? Well, it's because, dude, like if a console doesn't sell, it's going to go away. And if that's my preferred way to play, yeah, you're going to be shit out of luck. We have Piper with a super chat. Hold on, my stream is lagging a little bit. Hold on. Give me a second. I have to refresh my studio because it's breaking. Okay. I think we're back. Piper says, it's funny how we talk about Xbox is dead, but Microsoft as a company is closing in on $4 trillion. You know, at some point, well, Piper, you are true. They're closing in on $4 trillion. And Leo Jimmy, thank you so much for the $50 super chat, bro. I'm going to read that in just a moment. Good shit, bro. Why do people keep saying that I say Xbox is dead? Like at some like I like come on, this has got to be a troll at this point, right? Like I have not been the one saying that. The Xbox console's dead. But not Xbox as a brand. Yeah, that is true though, and I've always talked about that with Microsoft, where they have so much money, dude. Like it's not comparable. The value of Microsoft as a corporation does not compare to the value of Sony as a corporation. It just can't compare them. They're too different. And we have Leo Jimmy with a $50 super chat. Leo, thank you so much for the support, man. You're saying MVG Money, I solved their live service money problem. Low cost game preservation. PS3 has the online catalog and no one played them. You could have new and existing players. If everywhere people buy 60 FPS and 4K, sacrifice old for future exclusivity. So if I'm reading your super chat correctly, Leo, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I might be misunderstanding. Are you saying that Sony should basically remaster their classic, like the PS3 multiplayer library of games, the ones like Killzone and Resistance and Warhawk and stuff that really struggled to blow up in a big way? They should remaster them to 4K 60 and re-release them and try to basically make those successful today. Am I reading that correct? I mean, you are correct. That would be low cost because we're talking about remasters. Okay, so that's what you're saying. I mean, to be honest, that idea is not nearly as crazy as it sounds, mainly because the one thing that would be able to achieve is gauging appetite for those specific IPs. So, like, I mean, we heard Sucker Punch recently go on record saying they would like to see a Resistance trilogy. Resistance did have multiplayer. I think the sales of Resistance started to drop by the third game, but it had a multiplayer. Sony was trying to do something with it. If they were to remaster those games and have multiplayer, at least for one of those games, maybe the third game, right? If they did this, they would be able to get some idea of like, okay, how many millions of people really want Resistance to come back? And what that could do is if the remake trilogy or remaster trilogy, I should say, if that sold well enough and they had a multiplayer mode or component that had a decent player base or just some player base at all, it might signal to them that, you know what, we should make a proper Resistance 4 with a maybe a full-blown multiplayer live service. And that can be one of our more successful live service games. It's an idea. It's a thought, I think Sony looks back at these properties and they view them as like these were failures, but I don't know how they would do today. Like, I don't know how a modern day Warhawk would do. I don't know how a modern day SOCOM or, Killzone or, Yeah, I mean, something like Mag, I have no idea. I do know that there are those like PlayStation loyal and, PlayStation players who were there for the PS3 era that would be going ballistic over it. I do know that. So, it's an interesting idea. I mean, anything to me sounds better than dropping $3 billion on Bungie. Anything sounds better to me. So I would have to agree with you to an extent here, Leo. I think that Sony, they're trying to speak to, I think, a different generation of gamer. And maybe that's the disconnect, is Sony would be afraid that if they tried to go back to SOCOM, they tried to go back to Resistance or something like that, that they're trying to speak to an older generation of gamer that they can't rely on for the next 20 to 30 years or something. But I don't know, man. There is still this notion of like, maybe you can just kind of modernize these games a little bit. And I know that's like a cursed word in game development, but you know what I'm saying, where it's like, yeah, if you're going to like bring Resistance back and try to actually do something with it, you have to take cues from games like Call of Duty and Battlefield and modern FPSs that like, there's going to be certain contemporary things that people are going to expect to be there, that if you were to drop a remaster collection, they're not going to be there. And so it's a balancing act, because the reality is that these games are old enough that people could play those remasters today and be like, this isn't very good. Like, this doesn't feel very contemporary. It's a tough one. It's a tough line to walk, but either way, Leo, yeah, dropping them everywhere could be a better success than Concord. Don't tell Sony that. No, don't tell Sony that. I feel like almost anything Sony could have done could have been more successful than Concord, bro. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. A modern day Warhawk would do well. I think I did get a direct donation, by the way, from Wallroar. And he says, here Microsoft gave Sony a better cut than Steam. 80-20 split on the storefront. That's what you're hearing right now. Is that like a new rumor that popped up? That would explain a lot. That would explain a lot, to be honest. We have seen stuff like that in the past. Maybe Sony struck some kind of deal. That'd be fascinating. That would change everything. Not everything, but it would explain a lot. That would explain a lot. If maybe Microsoft was like, listen, Sony, what do we got to do? Got to give you 80%? Is that what you want? You want 80? Huh? Is that what you want? But like but the reason why I question that, though, is like, if you're Microsoft, like, why? Why? Like what does Microsoft gain from this? If they're selling for less of a cut, is it to try to retain any Xbox players they have? I don't know. That would be interesting if true, though. And Perfect Image dropped a direct donation, and he said, not to the majority of PlayStation users, not everyone likes zombie games. Sci-fi, some want stories and like FBI type games or a good shooter. PlayStation will see the money. PlayStation will see the bag. Bro, Perfect Image, he just can't deal with the zombie games anymore. He's tired of the zombie games. He's been beating this drum for the longest time. And I think there was another one from Perfect Image where he said, when PlayStation acquired Nixxes Software, Nixxes Software in 2013, they only had 85 people. My point is, Sony's first-party titles, their titles that are coming later, maybe they will be day and date, theorizing. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, Perfect Image, you're saying that you're basically saying that Nixxes Software has grown since Sony first acquired them, so that may indicate that they may be kind of expanding their bandwidth. Yeah, with ports, that could be true. That's a possibility. Garrett Green, a member for 21 months, saying, MBG, I finished Death Stranding 2 last night. Absolute masterpiece. I'm ready for the spoiler stream. Let's go. Yeah, dude. Definitely make sure you tune in because I got some stuff to say. And to be honest, I'm just as curious to see what you guys have to say. This is one of those very interesting, not reviews, but just game discussions where I'm very curious to see what other people have to say as well. So it'll be a good time. It'll be a good time, Garrett. And Isley comes in and drops a single membership gift. Isley is here to remind everybody that you can always drop a single member gift. Doesn't always have to be a 5 or a 10 or a 20 or a 50. It can always just be a single. Last stream, we got a bit of a single train going, which was cool to see. So, Isley, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let me go check on something real quick. Okay. Yeah, so Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, Shinobi602, people getting really carried away with the job listing. Hold on. Apparently, so Xbox era, they did leak Helldivers 2 was coming to PlayStation. Is that true? Jeff Gertzman was also talking about a few weeks before the announcement. Not so much in a I can now leak that this is happening way, but a throwaway kind of, I wonder if Summer Game Fest is when they announced that Helldivers Xbox port. Anyway. People super overreacted to the original post from the job listing. You'll continue to see multiplayer games everywhere in smaller projects, Patapon, Hot Shots Golf, Freedom Wars. For all Sony IPs launching on other platforms. Making these exclusives surely would lose Sony money. I think AA/live service games will launch everywhere. Geez, I got 96 replies. I don't know, man. Like, I mean, I get it. I do. I absolutely get it, man. People want to see Sony give up exclusivity just like Microsoft did. Obviously, we know why Xbox players want that to happen. I will tell you, I've come across a fair amount of PlayStation players that have made it clear that they would not care if Sony got rid of exclusivity. But I've also seen a lot of people react saying that they would absolutely care and that they would be upset and that they would leave, you know, so on and so forth. We're going to find out. I mean, look, man, if this is the direction Sony's going in, we're going to find out. And it's just going to be a thing. And I'm just trying to imagine like Gamescom or something, or like Game Awards 2025. And it's like Spider-Man 2018 coming to Xbox or some shit. Maybe that wouldn't be like at a stage event or something, but just an announcement. And it's like, I mean, what's going to happen? Because I don't know. I just look at the Xbox side of things, man, and it felt like a really big deal when Microsoft went third party. It was a big deal. It's like, holy shit, this is happening. And then it got real. It was just like, oh, and here it is. We're announcing 4 games. And then it just was like, boom, 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 boom. And here we are, where now we're getting reports that, yeah, Gears E-Day and State of Decay, they're day one. And the reaction, by the way, the reactions that I've been seeing to this is, oh, I would assume they were. Literally, nobody is surprised at this point. There's no drama, is what I'm trying to say. There's no drama around Xbox games being day one on PS5. And I'm just wondering if Sony kind of sees that and they're just like, well, yeah, we'll just get through that little rough patch. And then after that, it's just, okay, This is just the new normal. Because people will move on. Like, that's the reality, man. Like, Sony could announce tomorrow that Ghost of Yotei is going to drop day one on Xbox and PC, and you're going to see people lose their minds for about a week, maybe a month. After that, everybody just moves on, where it's like, anyway, what were we doing again? Oh yeah, we were playing video games. I don't know. I'm just trying to gauge, like, I'm trying to gauge what is the elephant in the room? Like, what is the problem? Because the only thing I can think is what I've discussed earlier, and I'll just reiterate it one more time, and that is the only problem I could see is that if Sony were to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, screw it, we're doing something that nobody ever thought we would do, and we're just doing it. The worst thing that could happen is, well, your console sales are now going to nosedive, or they're going to, like, it's going to be, you just lost a lot of customers, like a lot of console buyers. That's the only real problem I could see. And we still don't know if that actually would happen. And I don't know if Sony would want to fuck around and find out. But that's about it, man. Because, I don't know. I mean, like, my question for people who are, you know, they see this news and they're like, I'm going to PC. I mean, this is a real question. Like, why haven't you already gone to PC? Like, you know, you're getting Sony's games eventually. Like, so you're telling me you've just been building a digital PlayStation library this entire time to then just say, actually, never mind, I want to go to Steam instead? This is what I don't understand, is that, like, to say you're going to go to PC this deep in the generation, or like starting next generation, if you bought all your games physically, I could kind of maybe understand it a little bit, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm done. This is the end of an era. No more physical games. I'm selling my physical games, but I don't know. Like, you still would be getting rid of your library. I don't know. There's something peculiar about a lot of the reactions that I've been seeing that I don't quite understand, where I understand the visceral nature of it, where it's like, gasp, the tables have turned. Like, I understand that, but I don't understand the angle of, like, again, flipping the table. You think if they do this, they'll put the PlayStation storefront on PC? That would be fascinating. That's an interesting thought. There's a danger in doing that. I think that's where there's a real danger. I say this because Sony at that point is going to have to compete with Steam. And there's definitely things Sony would have to change and improve. Because Steam as a storefront is considered the gold standard. And one of the reasons why Sony has been able to get away with not changing some aspects of their storefront is because, well, you know, we have the edge in the console space. So Steam can do what they want over on the PC side, but in the console space, we are the best storefront. You know, we're the most modern storefront, and we have the most players. So we can just do things as we please. If Sony were to port their storefront to PC, I mean, yeah, they're going to have a hard time competing at all with Steam. And the only chance they would have is they would have to make major changes. In some, like, for example, one of the biggest changes they would immediately have to make is their refund policy. And it's like, I don't think Sony's going to, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like, Sony would have to implement the exact same refund policy that Steam has. Would they be willing to do that with this new leadership? Maybe. But history tells you that, like, they don't want to, dude, they don't even want to let you cancel your pre-order sometimes digitally, let alone give you a damn refund once the game's out. No changes would entice PC players. Well, see, that's another interesting angle to talk about this from, where it's like, what does this mean? Like, if there's one aspect of the PlayStation business that Sony absolutely wants to grow, is the storefront. And that does become... How do we know No, that wouldn't happen. I don't know. Like, I was gonna say that like Sony wants to grow their storefront. They want to grow their player. They want to grow their MAUs that are also interacting with their storefront. If console sales have kind of stagnated, like this is as good as it's going to get, how do you do that? You could put your storefront in other places, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm not jealous of whoever's running PlayStation right now. I'll tell you that. I'm not jealous of anybody who has to figure out like, well, we're doing better than we ever have. We got to keep it going. We got to keep making more money. I'm not jealous of that because it's just like, yeah, that's really tough. Alma, you're saying how MBG Steam has nothing to offer, only third-party games. Well, my understanding is that Steam. Well, I'm not really a Steam user, so I can't really tell you firsthand what makes it so good. It's just they got to be doing. I know they have a great refund policy. They got to be doing something right because I think the way that the reviews work, where you have user written reviews and stuff like that. There's just a lot of different things that Steam apparently has really kind of nailed down as a storefront that makes it very user friendly. And I think the PlayStation Store has improved immensely in the last like 10 years or 15 years, certainly. But there's just some basic things that I feel like Sony is lagging behind with. Like, for example, the fact that there's still not like there still is not written reviews on the PlayStation storefront like that. I feel like how is that not a thing? Like you can rate games, but no written reviews. I'm like, what? Like, it's 2025. Come on. Like, why? I should be able to see some written reviews for games on the PlayStation Store. You just see it. Sony gives away their exclusives. They don't have anything to offer. Xbox has Game Pass and Play Anywhere. Also, Nintendo has exclusives. That's an interesting thought. I mean, Xbox has Game Pass, but that's not doing anything for them. So I don't know that I would really look at Game Pass as like an advantage. Like from a consumer perspective, a consumer might choose Xbox because of Game Pass, but I'm saying like Game Pass growth isn't really there. So Game Pass does not seem to be a threat to Sony. It's Game Pass has also stagnated. Or actually in recent months it seems to have picked up a little bit, but so has PlayStation Plus. Game Pass has, from my understanding, Microsoft sees Game Pass as the last thing keeping Xbox players on their platform. Like this is why they haven't left. And that's, yeah, it's a pretty big reason not to leave. But I think Microsoft, you know, they understand that if they were to make any major change to Game Pass, like increase the price or diminish it or put, you know, make some kind of announcement where it's like, we're not doing day-and-date games or some crazy shit like that, they would lose millions of players overnight. Not just from Game Pass, but millions of players would, I think, leave their ecosystem because it's like, you know, I think that's the main draw. I think that's why people are there. Not everybody, but most people. You think Game Pass and Play Anywhere are huge? Well, they're not inconsequential. I wouldn't say they're inconsequential. I just don't know that. Like, I'm just saying from a level of like, does Sony see this as a threat? I'm not sure they do. It's kind of like similar to how Sony doesn't see Nintendo as a threat. I'm curious to see what Sony does, man, because there is this kind of air coming from Sony where I think they are behaving like winners in a sense, where like yeah, we won, and now we're just gonna do what we want. Not in a crazy way where they're like $80 games and PS5 price increase immediately and F you. No, I don't mean like that. I just mean like, what do we really have to worry about at this point? And that's where I feel, because think about it. When you look at the reaction from a lot of like hardcore PlayStation players on the internet anyway, some of them are really freaking out, being like, Sony, you fucking lost the plot, dude. Like you're like, this is your undoing. Like, I've seen so many replies, especially on Reddit, of people being like, well, if this is how you want to kill your business or destroy your brand. And I'm like, huh. I question, like, I get where you're coming from, but like, what happens? What happens? Like, I have yet to see see somebody explain, like, here's how they lose business. Here's why they, like, the closest thing I've gotten is, again, to people pointing out Xbox and be like, look at what happened to Xbox. And I'm like, dude, I don't think you can compare. I'm sorry, but I just don't think you can. Like, Xbox didn't die because of a lack of exclusives. They died because of lack of quality and really insane business decisions at the start of each one of their console generations that basically got them off to the worst possible start. And that's why I just feel like Sony hasn't done either of those things. They haven't done either. It's why, like, people who, they try to make it seem like Sony's PS5 generation has sucked. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that, man. Like, they had a really great launch lineup. They've had tentpole titles and smaller titles scattered every year. They've had second and third party partnerships, and they've had incredible third party support. So, like, what has been so bad about it? It's like, well, I don't know. Just some people say it's not good enough, not enough new IP. You know, they say that, but then they freak out when they see something like Intergalactic. So it's like, I don't know what to tell you guys. You know, it's like Sony is doing their thing, and they're doing great. And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, I'm seeing people say to me, like, full slate after telling me, like, Sony doesn't have any games. It's like, well, I don't get it. How can they bring a full slate if they don't have any games? I don't get it. I thought that their games, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just weird where it's like, I've witnessed this happen with Xbox, where it's like, well, I guess PlayStation players really love Xbox games. I'm like, what makes you say that? And they're like, look at how many copies Forza Horizon sold. I'm like, oh, Forza Horizon, the literal highest rated game that Microsoft has had all generation, the game that has never, from the studio that never released a bad game. That's the game you're using to basically validate all of Xbox's efforts. It's just, you're seeing bizarre, weird, illogical reactions to things. And I think that's only going to continue. And that's why I'm not interested in the bickering anymore. You know, maybe there was a time and place when the competition was fierce where it made sense, but the competition is over. Somebody will ask me, why the hell would Sony port a single player game, or sorry, not a single player game, a multiplayer game like Helldivers to Xbox? Why would they do that? And my answer to that is, I don't know, but I don't think it matters. I don't think the reason matters at this point. Like, to us, to Sony, yeah, to Sony, it's, well, money and sales. To us as the players, like, I don't think it matters. I really don't, because it's like, what are they going to tell you that's going to make you think, gasp, you know? Like, somebody was telling me that, like, apparently there were some, like, PlayStation players I guess they would be considered enthusiasts. I don't know, fanboys on like Twitter or whatever that were just kind of losing it over this. And I'm just like, well, where, what are you going to do? You know, you spent all this time talking about how much you've enjoyed PlayStation, how much you've enjoyed PlayStation's games. And so, you know, something comes up that basically says, well, their strategy may be shifting. What's the shift? Are they not making games anymore? Are they making bad games now? Are they only making multiplayer games? No, the shift is they're going to probably start porting some of their games to other places. They're going to go more multi-platform. It says that they're making a multi-platform team. Could it just be for live service? Yeah. But if it's not, what does that mean? To me, it's just a silly look because it's like, dude, I don't know. I can't speak for anybody else, but like, dude, Returnal, Sony, put Returnal on Xbox right now. Do it right now. I demand it. Well, I would be a little bit worried. Don't spend too much time or money on it. But put Returnal on Xbox right now. You know why? Because I want to see that game get more sales. Because that game didn't sell enough. Flat out. Like, Returnal was one of the best games I played all generation. One of the standout titles on PS5. It did go to PC. It got some sales on PC. But you know what? Housemarque, as far as I'm concerned, they deserve more. So yeah, put that fucking game on Xbox right now. And Xbox players, go out and buy that game right now because it's incredible. How's that going to hurt me? That's not. I fucking played the shit out of Returnal. And I put over 100 hours into it. I got the platinum. I'm stoked for their sequel. You know? Like, why would I don't know, man. I just, it's clear that Returnal didn't sell that many PS5s. I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't think the game struggled to get to 1 million sales. It didn't sell that many PS5s. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's a big tentpole heavy hitter title that's moving millions of units for Sony. It's not. Should it? Yeah, but it's not. And that's the reality of it. So the next best thing I'm going to hope for is, you know what? I want to see this team succeed, man. And I just don't understand the mindset of people who are like, how dare Sony? I can't support Sony anymore. It's like, why? Like, what, this means you're not going to play Soros? It's like, I'll play it on my PC. It's like, well, then you're still supporting Sony. You know? Like, I don't understand where the meltdown comes from. That's what I don't understand. I understand the questioning, like, oh shit, like what does this mean? Like, Sony, you really going, like, is this your whole slate moment? What is this? I get that. I don't understand the meltdowns. You're saying it's because with Sony fanboys, it's about console sales and exclusivity. If that goes away, they're going straight to PC. You see, that's been weird to watch. Yeah, that has been weird where it's like, bro, why were you not on PC already? I'm serious. I just question this, man. Like, I can at least have some level of respect for, like, it's like when New Soul 9 shows up. New Soul 9, with all this shit that was going on with Xbox, he's just like, bro, I just like playing on my Xbox, man. You know? I just like playing on my Xbox. And I've always found that interesting. And I always was like interested in his perspective because he's on a PlayStation channel saying that. And not being a fanboy about it. He's just saying, like, you know, it sucks to see that, you know, it's not that it sucks to see what Microsoft is doing, but that things have gotten to this point where it's like, yeah, they're not really selling. They're not the market leader. They're far from it. And we don't really know the future of the Xbox console. But as long as they keep producing a console, I'm going to be here because that's where I prefer to play. And I just find that notion interesting. Where it's like, that's pretty innocent in a way. Where it's like, yeah, dude, there's not really, there isn't some significant rhyme or reason to it because there doesn't have to be. And I'm not trying to gaslight people. People are allowed to be upset. And if they want to have a meltdown, they can have a meltdown. I'm just trying to provide a level of clarity where it's like, I think we shouldn't lose sight of the important things here, which is number one, if you're a fan of PlayStation, I can only assume it's mainly because of their games. It's because of their studios. You're a fan of their studios. You're a fan of the games that their studios produce. And number two, I assume you're a fan of the console, just the console experience. You prefer that over PC or over handheld or something like that. That's your main way to play. I think I find myself just confused by the meltdowns or the overreactions or the knee-jerk reactions, because it's like none of those things have been altered at all. If you want a premium home console experience, you have two options from Sony, the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. And when it comes to their studios, there's, all the games that you were excited about yesterday are still in development today, as far as we're aware. Nothing has changed. And the only thing that has changed, this is the only thing that has changed, is the prospect that, well, what if one of those games is also going to release on Xbox? And I'll be honest with you, man, like if that collapses everything for you, if that suddenly makes it where I don't see a point now, you probably do belong on PC. You probably do belong somewhere else, because if that was your only reason, like that was it, you didn't actually enjoy the console experience, you didn't actually enjoy what the PS5 offered, if that was your only reason, and I'm not saying that in a rude way, I'm just saying, honestly, you might be in the wrong place. You might want to go out there and see how PC gaming is for you. Go check out Nintendo. They'll have exclusives, And how it would be funny, like some of these people moved to Nintendo, like finally, a place where I can enjoy true exclusives. Next month, Nintendo announces, we're announcing a shift in our strategy. I just wonder if the walls were to come completely down and there were no more exclusives anywhere, and it really did just become homogenized, which there are concerns with that. There is some concern where it's like, okay, the homogenization of the industry it's a tantalizing prospect, but there is a level of like, how great has this become potentially? But if that were to happen, I just wonder, like, with some of these people, like, where would they go? What would they do? When your only option is just sit down and play a damn game that looks good to you on whatever you want. Why is that so bad? Not saying there aren't potential downsides, but why is it like this is the difference between me being able to actually enjoy this versus I can't even look at this. Like, I'm done. I say this as somebody where I've always valued exclusivity. But if I'm met with that kind of like, okay, now you're at that crossroads, you got two paths. And there's two paths because exclusivity may not be the, it may not be part of the equation going forward. I mean, if you ask me, like, dude, if that job listing indicates that every game, like with the PS6 generation, is going to go everywhere, I will admit, it makes my excitement for the PS6 overall slightly less, only because I know that, well, there's going to be a lot of bitching and complaining. Like, pretty much that's it. Like, I know it's going to be a lot of complaining. But generally speaking, it's like, well, Sony, as long as you produce a fucking awesome console, give it good support, and actually try to sell it. Like, you still try to support the console, make it a priority, and try to sell it and produce amazing games. Why would I be unhappy? Why would I be opposed to that? And the truth is, if I really was that offended by it, I would just go to PC. But I've never been a PC gamer, and I don't think I ever will be. I don't know, man. You're Broccoli Rob, that's crazy, bro. Well, we don't know that for sure yet, Kato. We don't know that for sure yet. Well, yeah, we talked about that Night of Cypher. Like, I'm not sure why people would abandon their libraries. I would, like, I said earlier, and I want to talk about this for a moment. I said earlier, I'm more concerned. Do you know what would push me away more aggressively from Sony? Like, this would be, but again, it's like, I'm not really sure where I would go, but I'm way more afraid of Sony announcing no more physical games for the PS6 than I am them being like, yeah, we're going to drop some more games on Xbox. I'm much more concerned about that because it's like, dude, if Sony, that will be very difficult for me to accept if they're like, yeah, we're not doing physical games. That would be very difficult because I'm like, bro, what are you talking about, man? Like, if Sony said we're going full multi-platform so we can keep making physical games, I would actually support that. I'd be like, yes, okay, do what you got to do. Just don't abandon physical games, man. I do worry about that. I really do. I've actually been really thinking, like, what are the chances Sony just says fuck it and they don't do? Because, like, where are you gonna go? You want to go collect physical Switch games? Maybe. I mean, maybe that's. I'm worried about that aspect, man. I'm much more worried about that than I am, them shifting more multi-platform. You think for new players, Sony can draw them through hardware and feature enticement? This will make the PS6 proposition much more interesting for PlayStation fans. Yeah. I mean, look, man, I want to put this out here too, because I know people are probably going to criticize me for this. And I want it to be on the record, right? I know people are going to criticize me and be like, MBG, why does it seem like you're just moving the goalposts or you're just going with whatever? It's like, listen, man, for as much as it may seem like I moved the goalpost, I assure you, if you really wanted to do your digging, because God knows people for some reason like to go digging and find quote unquote receipts that suit their narrative. If you were to go do your digging, you would find probably no joke streams from 2019 and 2020. Although I don't know if I was streaming prior to that, but you will find streams back then where I was saying, when people asked me, why are you not, or like, what would make you leave PlayStation? What would make you move away from them? Granted, I probably did use the term exclusives, but I've always put an emphasis on the quality of the games, man. It's the same reason why when Microsoft says, yeah, we're going to make a State of Decay 3. We're going to make a proper AAA State of Decay. I told people, like, bro, if this game doesn't come to PlayStation, I'm going to go buy an Xbox for it. I was going to buy an Xbox for Hellblade, and the main reason I didn't was because I found out that apparently it was like 5 hours. And I'm like, listen, man, I'm all about quality over the quantity of a game's length, but like, I'm not going to buy a whole fucking console for a 5-hour game. I'm not doing that. But I did play it. I did play Hellblade. And I assumed that wasn't coming to PlayStation. And I still stand by it. If State of Decay 3 doesn't come to PlayStation, I will go buy an Xbox to play it because I'm super stoked for that game. I hope it turns out to be good. But that's where I'm trying to say, man. Like, they're just, even when I was an Xbox One player, and I was like still kind of being rooting for the Xbox side of things, I remember like every time people would bring up Death Stranding, like, you're a Kojima fan, you love Metal Gear, are you going to get a PS4 for Death Stranding? And I said, yes, absolutely. If that's the only game I get it for, Sony got me. And again, it does highlight how for certain people, exclusivity does matter. Certainly, I am that person. Like, why did I get a PS3 even though I was a 360 fanboy? Metal Gear Solid 4, bro. It was one game that did it. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's got to be one really, really, really enticing game. one that's absolutely worth buying an entire console for. But you know, at the end of the day, if it's like, all right, listen, man, the hardware isn't really as important anymore because everything's kind of peaked and plateaued, and now it's about expanding horizontally, and bringing these games to newer players. Then the only question I'm going to have at that point is, okay, I need to know what the quality of these games is going to be then. And that's what it always came down to, man. What it always came down to. It's always been funny to me when people are like, wait until the day comes when Sony goes day and date with PC with all of their games. And I'm like, that's funny, bro, because you clearly weren't there when I was talking about Xbox on YouTube when they went day and date on PC, and I was like, I really don't care. I don't know if that content still exists, but I mean, that was like the early fucking days. But I remember specifically saying, like, I'm more worried about what this does for console sales than I am the idea of people having access to the game. I just don't want to see the console. Basically, my big fear with Xbox came to pass at the end of the day, which is kind of sad. If you go way back, dude, the biggest fear I had for Xbox was like their inability to produce higher quality games rapidly enough to move consoles, or to entice people, or to just make it seem like they actually know what they're doing. My big fear is like, dude, they're going to kill the Xbox console. Like, that was my fear. That, like, they're going to kill it, dude. And every time they shifted where they're like, we're focused on Game Pass now, and we're focused on PC now, and we're focused on these other areas, I was like, dude, you need to be focused 100% on your console because it's struggling. You know? You play console sales, not games, fanboy. You think so? So you think so? That's funny, bro. I love when random strangers on the internet tell me whether I'm actually playing video games or not. I love it. That's cool, man. All right, well, what games are you playing then? Look at the shrine, but you mean look at the games? Is that what you're telling me to look at? Look at the fucking video games that I have, that I play, that I played and I still play? Well, actually, most of them I probably don't play now, but is that what you're telling me to do? That's what you got? That's your big gotcha? Look at your games. So you come in here and you tell me I don't play games, but then you tell me to look at the games. All right. You can't make this shit up, bro. I know he's trolling, but it's like, come on, man. Show them, not yet, 0 point. One day, I'm saving it down the line. One day, I'm going to do a video where or maybe it'll be a stream. It'll be a video or stream or both, where I'll go over my entire collection. But yeah. Why do you care so much about physical games, to be honest? I'm the exact same. Why do we care so much about physical games? I'm the exact same and don't even know why. Well, for me, I'll be honest, for me, it's the fact that the day that you can, I mean, there is the consumer rights part of it, but for me personally, because I have digital games as well, and I'm not that against digital. It's just, for me, if that option is completely killed, like Sony's like, we're not making physical PS6 games, that feels like a major part of the overall experience has been removed from, it's just not a thing anymore. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just, I don't know. I get satisfaction out of buying a physical video game, holding it in my hands, having the disc, putting the disc in the disc tray or the disc drive, taking it out, putting it on my shelf, having the collection. I've always, I don't know, it's just always made it feel like a more complete experience. It'll be mostly my Dead by Daylight. I do have Dead by Daylight physically. I think I have it unopened. We have Ray here. with a super chat saying, do we have pre-order numbers for Helldivers 2 on Xbox? I don't believe so. I do love that new game / new disc smell. Yeah, it's not good. It smells like chemicals, but there's something about that. Oh my God, it's so nostalgic. So nostalgic. I don't mind. It can be, I mean, I understand like the annoyance of like swapping the discs and shit, but I like it. I don't know. I do. I do like it. I have a genuine anxiety that Sony's not going to have physical PS6 games, and that's going to be... You want to talk about... Dude, they could announce Spider-Man 3 dropping day one on Xbox. I probably won't rant about that. I mean, I'll have something to say. They come out and they're like, we're not doing physical PS6 games. You're going to see me ranting. I'm going to be really upset, man. That's going to be tough. That's going to be really, really tough. Like there's a chance if Sony doesn't have physical PS6 games, there's a chance I would just stick to PS5 for a longer time and just continue to build out my PS5 collection until I eventually upgrade to the PS6 hardware. But that's the thing. I was thinking this and I was like, well, Sony's going to do cross-gen with the PS6 for a while, right? Like they're definitely doing cross-gen. They're still going to have physical PS5 games being made then. So like we will use Spider-Man 3 again as an example. If Spider-Man 3 is a game that comes out in like 2029 or something, and it's going to be a PS6 game, but it's also going to be a PS5 game, they're definitely going to have a physical PS5 version. So surely that would mean they have a physical PS6 version, right? No, Broccoli Rob. No. And Michael Stanbrook with a super chat says, I think PlayStation Studios games are first on PS5, then all platforms later would still mean some form of exclusivity. Live service day and date makes sense. Yeah, I mean, that's another aspect we've been talking about. And William Aguilar earlier was kind of pointing this out, where he was saying Sony has told the shareholders numerous times that, you know, when it comes to their big tentpole single-player games, they're being strategic with them because they still want to use them to sell consoles. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Because it's if you do timed exclusivity, you're still reaping some of the potential benefits of, you know, if this matters to you, we're still offering it. But I don't know, man. There is always that kind of idea too. Like, technically, Sony's been doing timed exclusivity all generation with PS5 and PC, and Sony did say that, like, dude, every first-party game we've released, like Ratchet and Clank and, you know, Returnal, Spider-Man 2, Last of Us Part 1, all these games, they did eventually make their way to PS5, PC, like a year or two later, and it didn't impact their console sales negatively at all. It didn't hurt their sales. So it's like, yeah, you could see why Sony would be more maybe willing to just be like, all right, well, let's push the envelope a little bit further. Leo Jimmy with the $20 super chat. Thank you for the support, Leo. You're saying MBG Money, point of exclusives is to produce a banger for console. Multiple devices could lessen quality itself. I care about the games. I have to keep other devices in mind for development before the game is out. Or they have to keep other devices in mind for development before the game is out. Series S, anyone? Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and my stance on this is I do believe that when a development studio is making a really expensive AAA high-quality game and they are told that you only have to make it for one piece of hardware, it does lessen the load. It makes it so that less time and resource has to be spent on optimization. And I think, you know, they don't really have to worry about scalability. They just have to worry about just spec it for this one piece of hardware. That's it. And I think that it does leave some potential development room for, like, okay, well, the time that we're going to save not having to optimize for PC and not having to optimize for multiple consoles, we're going to put that into polishing the game. You know, not just polishing the game, but potentially, you know, dev time is dev time. How much of that can be spent thinking of different ideas you can put into the game itself. There's a real tangible benefit here that we have seen, to be clear. Like, we have seen this. We've heard developers go on record saying that, yes, it does make the development process a bit smoother. And it does free up a little bit of resources and gives them a little bit more time, or they can release the game sooner, right? But I think it really just depends on how it's handled. Like, keep in mind, one of the reasons why Sony's probably doing this is because they realize they can't just rely on Nixxes. Sony has basically been completely relying on Nixxes and some of their internal studios to port stuff to PC, but Nixxes is just one studio. And you do have to wonder, they do own Nixxes, yeah. You do have to wonder if, like, well, you know, it's not feasible to ask this singular studio to do PC ports, you know, full multi-platform ports of all the live service games they have in development, and just take on that entire workload. They could expand Nixxes, but maybe this is where they're just like, we need to actually create a dedicated team. But I don't know. It's interesting because the dedicated team, multi-platform team that Sony's making, it doesn't seem to indicate that it's from a development standpoint. It actually seems to indicate it's more from a management standpoint, which is really weird. Like, it's fascinating to me. I don't quite understand. Like, there's still an aspect to this job listing that I don't fully understand, where it's like, is this team meant to support or just manage the portfolio of their whatever games they make multi-platform? I'm not entirely sure. And Broccoli Rob with a $2 super chat says, "Can I borrow $1?" You know, I always appreciate your $2 when asking me to borrow $1, Broccoli Rob. You know I do. But Leo Jimmy, I will say that one of the things people do need to kind of keep in mind is that these first-party development teams are not, they can't just pivot on a dime. The best example I could give you is if you look at Xbox, look at Playground Games. Dude, Playground Games, they didn't port Forza Horizon 5. There was another external team that was hired to port it. Now, you could make the argument that maybe that was, well, listen, no matter what argument you make, think about that. They didn't port it themselves. Why? They were busy working on another game. So in other words, if they wanted to do the port themselves, it would have taken more time and resource away from that other game they were developing. So what did they do? They hired a separate team where it's like, how much you want? We're going to hire you guys. You do the port. What does that tell you? It confirms that it takes more resources up. It takes time. It's not just a flip of a switch. It's not literally like we just go in, we flip a couple switches, and boom, there's the PS5 version. It takes time. Same thing with PC. That's why Nixxes has had to work on almost every PC port. They need an entire dedicated team working on this. And the bigger the game, the more bespoke the engine, the more time they probably need. And so, you know, this is another thing that does need to be considered, where when we talk about exclusivity, I mean, frankly, like, there's a chance that if Sony did turn to Insomniac and said, can we have a PC version ready day one? They might be like, no. Like, we're going to need to delay the game to do that. And if Sony's not willing to delay it, then your only other option is, well, we need to figure out who to pass this to. And then, yeah, maybe you pass it to Nixxes. But I don't know. It's just one of these things where these teams, they're not used to doing multi-platform development. Same thing with Microsoft's teams, dude. Like, I do wonder, like, if, like, apparently Halo Studios, right? They're making like a Halo remake, and they're, I think, trying to develop the game from the ground up for the PS5. right now. And the last rumor and report we heard about is they're not happy with the progress they're making or whatever. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know that that has anything to do with a lack of it being exclusive, but there's just no denying that, that team went from you only have to make it for Xbox and then PC, and now we're just going to throw in 2 more consoles on top of it. Maybe 3 if you're talking about the Switch too. I just think that we need to kind of always keep in mind that the logistics of multi-platform game development, it is very simple. It is more platforms equals more time and resource put into the overall development. Period. End of discussion. Less platforms you're making the game for, the more time you save, the more resource that can be allocated towards other things. That's just the way it is. Should that be the only reason for exclusivity? No. But we are talking about, like 20 plus teams or something like that. Maybe not 20, but at least like 10 to 12 teams that every single time they've made a PlayStation game, they've never had to worry about anything other than the singular PlayStation version. They've never had to do that. And yeah, the more ports you do, the more potential revenue, the more potential sales. So I do wonder if this team, I would like to get more insight into this multi-platform team that Sony is putting together, because it's like, is this like a portfolio management team, or is this more like, no, this is going to be a portfolio management team and a like development team as well. Like this team is literally going to specialize in, for example, like Horizon multiplayer. Like Guerrilla Games has never done anything with Xbox. It's like, okay, yeah, like this team is going to help them. They're going to develop the Horizon PC version. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting times for PlayStation, man. We pretty much know what to expect with Microsoft. Like I said, there are reports confirming that Gears E-Day and State of Decay 3, day one PS5. Is that adding more development time? Yes. Would Gears of War E-Day release sooner if there wasn't a PS5 version in development? Yes. Yes, it would. That's just the fact of the matter. Would it release like a year ahead? No, you're not talking about a delay of a year, but you're probably talking a couple months, maybe even 6 months. Look at Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones needed like 5 to 6 months of extra development to get that game up and running properly on the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. So this is real. There is a real, tangible, I would say, I don't want to say it's a negative, but cost. That's the word. There's a real cost associated with, if you want to go multi-platform, you have to consider your timelines. You have to consider your development resources. And, there's absolutely a reason why Nixxes Software is credited with the, Xbox port of Helldivers. Because Sony's like, we don't want you guys. Arrowhead, if they had to stop to port the game for Xbox alone, you'd probably see a slight delay in content for Helldivers 2. And Sony was probably like, no, like, don't worry about that. Keep the content flowing. We'll get Nixxes to do it. That's literally why we have these guys. Their job is to port games. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, there is an overall strategy to all of this. What is going on in the chat right now, bro? At the end of the day, though, man. Well, hold on. Do I think we'll get an announcement of the Venom game from Insomniac this year? I mean, if the rumor that Venom is coming out in 2026 is true, I think we could get the announcement this year. Yeah. I could see it. But I mean, look, man, if at the end of the day, exclusivity is dead and it really does dissolve and go away, I will be a little sad, mainly because it's like exclusivity has been such a vital part. Not vital, that is the wrong word. It's been such a major part of defining these platforms, defining PlayStation, defining Xbox, defining Nintendo, still defining Nintendo. Like, these exclusives have truly given these platforms an identity. And it's not to say that, like, for example, is Gears of War any less Microsoft now that it's multi-platform? Not really. It's still an icon for Microsoft, for Xbox. It still represents Xbox. But no one will forget 2005 Gears of War, that launch trailer, and seeing the first gameplay for Gears of War on the Xbox 360 and just how synonymous it was with the box, that white 360 box, and how you're like, God damn, I need me one of those. That was always cool. It was always cool. And I'm going to miss that if the future truly is. Like, I mean, in the next like 5 years or so, like, yeah, this is coming to an end. It is always going to be cool for me when I'm over there on the Xbox One being like, Microsoft, what the fuck are you doing? You know, Microsoft, get your shit together. And seeing the E3 reaction for God of War 2018 and seeing that standing up alongside the vertical PS5 or PS4 Pro, and me just feeling this sense of like, holy shit, bro, like, oh my God, what is Sony doing over there? You know, even with like the PS5, even during this PC port generation, seeing things like Ratchet and Clank, and Demon Souls and stuff like that, just like, wow, man, this console is amazing. Even right now, seeing something like, even right now with something like Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei, like, I would be okay if these games weren't exclusive, truthfully. Like, I'm not going to enjoy them any less, but it is cool to see, like, Sony come out and be like, check out this game that we made from the ground up for the PS5, because we want to sell this console, and we want you to please be excited for this game. Please buy this game if you have the console. If you don't have the console, please consider buying a console for this game. That's cool. I like that. I'll never not like that. But at the end of the day, if this is it, and this is the beginning of the end, and the only exclusivity that's actually going to exist purposely is Nintendo, like, Nintendo's just like, yup, we're not moving an inch. Our games will only ever be available on Nintendo developed hardware, then okay, then so be it. I'm not going to move to Nintendo. Just Nintendo serves as proof, as I will not I will not support a piece of hardware or a platform in perpetuity over exclusivity. Could they produce an exclusive? Will they produce an exclusive that says, you got me, I'm going to buy a Switch 2 now? Probably. But do they have me as a loyal supporter that's just going to, like, yeah, Nintendo is my platform now? No. And, that's just the way it is, man. So what are you guys doing? You guys are just naming games but putting broccoli in. Dead by Broccoli, Broccoli Hero 3, Mafia the Old Broccoli, World of Broccoli Craft, Broccoli Rising. What is going on? All right, clearly you guys, clearly I'm like repeating myself at this point. You guys tuned out. Broccoli Cord. Did you guys see that video that Mystic put out? The coveted Concord Platinum. Did you guys know I have the Concord Platinum? Did you guys know that? That's right. I'm one of the elite. I'm one of the elite. You guys are still going Rob Cry New Broccoli. Do I have a physical copy of Concord? Do I? I don't know. Do I? Just Mario and broccoli. Nice. Brocklathon. What is going on? Lethal Broccoli 2. I think that's a movie, bro. No Man's Broccoli. Guys, are we going to get the 75 members today or what? Almost says kind of feel like eating broccoli for dinner now. Broccoli Life 3. Forza Broccoli. What is going on? Mrs. MBG just walked in and said, Broccoli Rob must be in the chat. He sure is. Broccoli's Creed. Ratchet and Broccoli 2. There you go. There you go. God of Broccoli. Metal Broccoli Solid. Silent Broccoli. See, now you guys, now it's taken me over. Twisted Broccoli, the broccoli of us. Broccoli 1886. Days Broccoli. Resident Broccoli. This is so stupid. Broccoli Simulator. There you go. That's probably a real game. I bet you Broccoli Simulator is a real game. Broccoli 64. All right. All right. This is enough. Enough. Holy shit. My chat has been completely taken over. All right. We have Jenna Hayes with a $5 super chat. Mob Boss MBG, is it true you smashed up a Series S because of how angry you were with the multi-platform job listing? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I wasn't online yesterday. I got a Series S and I had to smash it up. Took a hammer to it. Still in my basement. Destroyed. Pieces everywhere. Pieces of plastic everywhere. I went crazy. I was losing my mind. I was like a rabid animal in my basement yesterday. Screaming. That poor Series S didn't stand a chance. Motor Broccoli Sport. Yeah. They're still going with the broccoli. How's the mold? There is no mold. Mold's gone. Jenna Hayes, thank you for the super chat. Yeah, guys, we get the 75 members and I'll smash a Series S. I will smash a Series S with my bare hands. I'll beat the shit out of it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Do not donate memberships thinking I'm going to smash a Series S. I want you to donate memberships. I want you to become a member, but don't think I'm going to be smashing a Series S. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Uncharted The Lost Broccoli. That one's kind of cursed. That one's kind of cursed. Yeah. Uncharted Lost Broccoli, man. God damn. Well, I will tell you guys, the console wars would truly be over, like for real, for real. And that would be cool. But, you know, there was one other thing. I wanted to mention. There was one other thing I wanted to mention. Hold on. What the hell? And I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think this will probably I think this will be the final part of this conversation before we can kind of like just put a bow on it for now. When we talk about Sony potentially pivoting their strategy to porting games to Xbox, specifically Xbox, not PC, not even Switch 2, but talking about Xbox. Let's say Sony currently has this idea in mind where they're like, let's do what we did with our games for PC. Let's do that for Switch 2 and Xbox. And let's start with a game like Spider-Man 2018 or Horizon Zero Dawn. I can understand why Sony would want to invest some time and resource into porting those games. Like, let's just say Horizon Zero Dawn. I can understand why they would want to invest some time and resource into porting a Switch 2 version, right, of Zero Dawn. The Xbox version, though, I'm very confused about. I really am, because Sony has to know, man, like, and this is why somebody said earlier that there's maybe going to be like a Sony will get like a larger cut. But I do wonder if Sony were to start bringing any of their, like, backporting any of their single player games to Xbox, I wonder if they would actually see like even decent sales. And it's no offense to Xbox players, but it's just the reality that, like, dude, they have been conditioned not to buy games. I mean, I had a friend text me today who was like, PlayStation Studios games are coming to Xbox. And I was like, yeah, but, you know, I think Sony may find out that Xbox players don't really buy games. And this is somebody who plays on Xbox through Game Pass. And he was like, oh, yeah, they'll come to Game Pass. And that's where I'm like, oh, I don't think so, dude. And I just can't help but wonder, like, is that really what, like, is that truly the mentality of the Xbox player where it's like, it'll come to Game Pass? It's like, no, dude, it's not. Like, you better believe if Sony ports Spider-Man or Horizon to Xbox, they are not going into Game Pass. And Microsoft would never pay Sony the amount that they would need to cough up to put that in Game Pass. Sony doesn't even put their own games in their own service. And I just really wonder, like, you know, I just really wonder, like, what Sony's expectations would be sales-wise, where it's like, I don't know, man, you're talking about a small install base of 30 million, probably less than that by this point, you know, people actually playing on their Xboxes. What is the expectation there? I just wanted to bring that up as well, because we talked about that a little bit earlier, but that's the one aspect of this whole thing that I don't quite understand. Where it's like, if it's true what everybody is trying to tell me, it's full slate, bro, everything's going, I just can't help but wonder. Well, I mean, the amount of time and effort and money that would have to go into bringing these single player games over to make a bespoke Xbox version. I'm using the word bespoke. I'm listening to too much Digital Foundry. What are they expecting to do sales wise? I don't know. Yeah, that's true. Spider-Man does have some history on Xbox for sure. Yeah, so that I could kind of see, but I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. I just, you know, I just think that there are a lot of people who want to see exclusivity die. There are a lot of people that base their entire conversation every single time they talk about it. They would base their entire conversation around exclusivity. And I just feel like, well, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I don't know. This might be a good place to wrap up the stream. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? I feel like I've said pretty much everything I could about this topic. Talked about it for over 3.5 hours. Damn. You guys are still going with broccoli. Okay. I'm going to have to end this damn stream just because people won't stop talking about broccoli in the chat. How did we get here? The only way to stop the broccoli was to nuke the stream. All of our games in one library. That's true, Wes. That's true. Hanzo says it was my fault. How could you do this, Hanzo? All right. No, I'm not frozen. Sorry. I'm not frozen. I'm like looking at my chat and I'm like, well, I don't know. I got nothing to bounce off of, man. Everybody's just talking, like legit, everybody's just talking about broccoli. So I'm like, damn, Broccoli Rob, you really really messed me up, bro. God damn, Nat. All right. Well, I've just been sitting here waiting. I gave it like a full minute of just silence. And you guys are still talking about broccoli, so I think this is gonna be hold on. I have to make an executive decision. There's only one way to cleanse the chat. Okay, so we will do. All right, I'm gonna give you a warning right now. I'm turning slow mode on. Okay, I'm turning slow mode on, and you will only be able to type in one chat every 90 seconds. So choose wisely. Starting now. Oh, El Unico. El Unico messed up. Broccoli point. Now bro's got to wait 90 seconds. I hope you're happy, Broccoli Rob. And they're still doing it. You know what? I give up. They're still, everybody's using their chat by just still talking about broccoli. Guys, I swear to God, I will ban the word broccoli. Good way to kill your channel. Nah, Broccoli Rob's going to be responsible for that. All right, guys. Xbox might give PlayStation a better deal than Steam. I don't want any platform to die. You think multi-platform is good for the business? People were talking about that. Yo, I'm banning this person. I'm banning this bitch. Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here. Go where you belong. Go where you belong. King of the Bridge of Broccoli. Okay. Who got banned? A nobody. A nobody. A good-for-nothing troll. That's who. Hello. Come on, Luna. What's up? I guess Luna wanted to stop by and say goodbye. Look, she always looks like she's in alert mode, like she's gonna attack me. She makes me nervous, dude. All right, guys, that's it. That's gonna wrap up today's stream. I was just kind of waiting around to see if there was any last thoughts I got, but that's it, man. I've said everything I could on this topic. We'll see what happens. It's going to be pretty funny if by the end of all this, it's just like, no, Sony's still going to be... Oh, wait, yeah, we got to do reps. You're right. I almost forgot. Yeah, we got to do reps. That's true. All right, we'll do some reps, and then we'll head out. But it's going to be funny if by the end of this... it turns out that it's literally just talking about live service games. That would be pretty funny. How did I forget? I don't know. I was just thinking about broccoli, bro. That's all it was. Broccoli has taken over my mind. All right, let me pull this up. We'll do a couple of shoulder presses, and we'll do a couple of curls. Do some Metal Gear. I'm feeling Metal Gear today. See, we'll do another solid theme. How about I just realized you guys couldn't hear shit. Try this again. I'm just... Why are you guys still talking about broccoli, bro? What is going on? Do some curls. There's no way Chase is in my chat asking, how do we buy you huge fake broccoli stalks for a stream decoration / prop? That's it. I'm cutting the rep short. I'm done with you guys. All right, guys. Those are the reps you're going to get for today because I just can't deal with... I'm going to ban the word broccoli. All right, guys. In all seriousness, thank you for tuning in. That's going to wrap up today's stream. Yeah, it's a good thing I said everything I needed to say, right? But like I said, make sure you have notifications turned on because we're going to be doing our Death Stranding 2 spoiler cast either tomorrow or Tuesday. Okay? I haven't decided if it's going to be tomorrow or Tuesday yet. I do want to stream regardless tomorrow. So we will be streaming no matter what. But yeah, just make sure you have notifications turned on. And yeah, so also I want to make sure to give a big thank you to everybody who dropped support today. We did end up wrapping up today with 56 members, thanks to Silent Spartan dropping that 50 bomb, and a lot of super chats today. Thank you guys so much. Well, Chris, I'm going to be streaming tomorrow, no matter what, like tomorrow and Tuesday. I'm just not sure if the spoiler cast is going to be tomorrow or Tuesday. So it's a coin flip. There's a 50% chance the spoiler cast will be tomorrow. If it's not, it will be for sure on Tuesday. But if we don't do a spoiler cast tomorrow, we'll just be doing a regular stream. All right? So just be on the lookout. I also want to make sure to give a shout out to Devil Shooter, who always does the timestamps for the streams. You know, always got to make sure to give him that shout out. People were asking about him the past couple days. Devil Shooter, I did let them know. There were just some people still leaving comments who I guess didn't get the memo. But yeah, no, I will make it Devil Shooter. You won't have to worry about that. It will say spoiler cast straight up in the title and thumbnail. Or at least, at the very least, the title. So hopefully there won't be people clicking the stream without reading the title. It'll be one of the first words. It'll be like Death Stranding 2 spoiler cast. All right. And the idea is I want to dedicate the entire stream to it. So, and it's cool if you can't timestamp that, by the way. Yeah, not a big deal. When we do the spoiler cast, if you're still playing it and you haven't beaten it and you can't timestamp it, no big deal at all. I mean, honestly, that probably doesn't need to be timestamped anyway. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much for all you do for the channel and the community. Good conversation today. We'll see what the upcoming week brings. And yeah, that does it. Hit the like button on your way out. We're at 178 likes. We could probably push that up to 200 if we really wanted to. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And I hope to see you guys back here tomorrow. All right. So until then, take care, everyone.